All right. Welcome. This particular webinar is something that I think that is actually very important to understand. And it's not just about job hopping. It's about how employers view when you are moving jobs. And honestly, the people that move the jobs the least and or are not, don't spend a lot of time moving between jobs, meaning you might just be at one job and you might stay there for several years, are often the most valuable employees. The longer you stay someplace, the more it looks like you're doing a good job, that you haven't been asked to leave. They're able to get through all sorts of kind of political things and doubts about the employer and stay there for a long period of time. This particular webinar is about that. And it's about how to understand how employers view leaving positions, and then also what are acceptable reasons when they're interviewing you to give for moving positions. One thing I did also want to bring up is this is really the most important question that employers ask when they're looking to interview someone. So this is, if you watching this webinar, this particular topic is something that is the number one topic that law firms are concerned about when they're interviewing you. It's the number one topic that they ask recruiters. So for example, when I have a candidate and I send them to a firm, I could write a 5-page letter about how great they think I think the candidate is, but they might not even read it. All they're looking to find out is the reason that the person is moving. And they'll call up and they'll say, that was a great letter, but why exactly is this candidate moving? So this particular question, when the law firm is asking why you're moving, is honestly the most important question. It's the most important interview question. It's the most important thing that you need to understand when you're talking to employers and how you answer that question, because they're asking that question to find out a lot of different things, like why would you go there? Why would you leave your current employer? What is the situation there? Is it something that you caused? And a bunch of different things. So this topic, I think, is honestly among the most important topics you could ever hear about. And if you learn about this, it's going to prepare you extremely well for interviews, and then also make you understand why it's often better to stay with your existing employer than it is to be moving between places, even if you think you're going to get be treated better or get more opportunity or more money. Understanding the answer to this question is extremely important, because people that move jobs too often and move for the wrong reasons often make very poor mistakes in their careers, and it ends up harming them for a long time in the long run. So you need to be able to answer this question. This is a live webinar. After this presentation, I'll take questions, and as many as everyone has. I do have a hard stop that's not too long after it's not too short after the webinar, but the questions are really probably the most important part. Any questions you have related to this or anything else, I'll take at the end of the presentation, and then we can hopefully answer as many of them as we can. But it's important to ask questions, and then any questions you have about what I'm talking about today, I'll also be able to answer. But anything you have a question about, I'll talk about. When you switch jobs, there's really nothing wrong with doing so. It's very common for attorneys to switch firms after a few years. They may start at a firm and then you get your feet wet there. You make mistakes. You learn about people. You may learn typically after a few years of practice, you can actually move to a better firm. Quite often, it's much easier because you're graded on your law school performance when you're in law school. After you've been out of school for a few years, you're basically evaluated more on your practice area than your law school and your law school grade. It is often good to move, but not always. One of the things that happens to a lot of people is they start looking for jobs very early. So an example would be if we have, I'm just giving you a hypothetical number, 10,000 attorneys that have applied or 20,000 attorneys that have applied and sent their resumes to BCG in 2023, probably 5,000 of those are 2023 graduates. And the idea being that it's very difficult you really shouldn't be moving in your first year of practice and often even in your second year. What a lot of people will do is they'll get into a firm, they won't feel like they're being treated well, or they'll have these learning experiences where their work is being critiqued and they won't like it. And they think there's something wrong with them, even though it's just part of the learning experience. they will feel their ego's been attacked, and then they'll start looking for jobs very early. And then they'll get to another firm and they'll start doing the same thing. So there are a lot of attorneys that within their first 2 or 3 years have potentially been at 3 or 4 firms, and you should not be doing that. And you really shouldn't be at more firms, 4 firms in 5 years or even 6 years. If you keep looking at a lot of firms, it doesn't work. No one is going to be interested in you. The best firms, by the way, if you've been at 2 firms in 5 years and you want to go to the 6th firm, some of the very, very best firms that have the ability to choose the best people aren't going to select you. They'll select you if you've been 4 years at your first firm or 3 years at your first firm, but they're definitely not going to be interested if it looks like it's not working out. So you have to have very good understanding of the reasons that you're moving firms, especially if you're doing so early in your career. One thing I also think is very important to talk about, and I talk about this most of the time in webinars, because it's for young attorneys that are listening to this, it's extremely important. What you need to understand very early in your career is that you really are not in a law firm for getting the highest salary. You're really there to be trained and to get the best training as you possibly can. So people will move for incremental salary increases. They'll move to be just for dumb reasons. And really your most important task in the first few years of really the first 5 or so years of your practice is to get trained. And so you need to be careful about the reasons that you move. And if you move several times in a short time span, if you're the law firm, you're obviously going to think that this person's going to come to my law firm and they're going to do the same thing. They're not going to be committed and they're going to leave very quickly as well. And the problem when people leave, just so you have an understanding of this from the employer's point of view, is I see this all the time. If I hire someone that was at their last job for 6 months or a year, they'll come in and they'll be in their job before that the same amount of time. They'll often talk an extremely good game. And when you're interviewing them, they'll look like they're going to do very well. Then they'll start and there'll be problems with their work, or they will disconnect or something at some point. And then once that happens, the whole quality of their work will go down. There may be people that start gossip and are on a negative side, and then everything just goes downhill. And this is what happens a lot of times with people that move jobs a lot. They're not committing, and employers don't like that. It affects their clients. It affects all sorts of things. And so you need to be looked at someone that has a long-term commitment to what you're doing. And when law firms see a lot of movement, what they're concluding a couple of things. They're concluding that your work may not have been well received. So what happens if an attorney's work isn't well received is they're given a certain amount of work initially, and then people stop giving them work. And then when they stop giving them work, they realize that maybe they should be leaving. Often, if you moved a lot of times in a short period of time, you may have been asked to leave. Sometimes you're asked to leave because you start getting along with people, or your work's not they just don't know. But there are attorneys that will have attendance problems. They'll have all sorts of issues that the law firm won't like, and they may ask them to leave, or problems with their work, all sorts of things. And sometimes people leave because they're just unable to get along with others. And this is very common. People will leave because they don't feel like their associates and other people like them. They may leave because they just have personality conflicts with partners and things. And that's not good. And one point I did want to make to you is I've run this recruiting firm for 25 years. And then when we have recruiters come in, there's always, when we hire someone that has been at their last job for 10 years or 8 years, they will almost always stay at our recruiting firm for 8 or 10 years. But then if they have been at the last job for a year, they'll almost always stay at our recruiting firm for a year. And there are people that just go into different environments, and the ones that leave are often like, oh, this is bad because of this, and people are down because of this, and I'm leaving because of this. And so people will always, that have problems in different environments, will find reasons not to make them work. And people that don't have problems, that are just consistently stay and environments will be subject to the same things that are negative or that the people that leave are, but they're able to just get along in an environment. So if you're unable to get along and you're leaving a lot, just shows that maybe you're the kind of person that's not getting along in work environments. And again, none of these reasons are bad reasons for moving. There are always good reasons for moving. And it may seem strange that as a recruiter that gets paid by people moving firms, and this is what I'm talking about, but it's actually very important. And you have to understand how employers are thinking when you're moving firms. You have to understand how you're thinking when you're moving firms, because that may not always be the smartest thing. And when people see your resume and they see movement, they're going to decide whether or not they should interview you based on that. And your reasons for moving need to make sense. They just need to be something that the law firm understands. And just one point before I go to this next point that I want you to understand as well is when you start having a lot of movement on your resume, what that shows is it shows many times that you're someone that's just a soldier of fortune, like you're just going to the place that pays the most. You don't have any loyalty to the organization. You don't have any loyalty to the people you're working with. You're just moving around for your own best interest. And if an employer doesn't immediately meet that, then you're just going to be out of there. And that's scary to employers. Employers want to feel that you're someone that's going to be there and through thick and thin and good and bad and stick with them instead of just leaving at a moment's notice, because those type of people, just as in personal relationships, are very easy to find. So what would you prefer in a personal relationship? What would you prefer if you were hiring someone? Would you want that person to just get up and leave? And so once you do that a few times, it immediately looks, that's what's going to happen to the next employer. And people will never feel comfortable getting close to you. They'll never feel comfortable giving you important work that may be lasting a long time. They may never feel comfortable introducing you to clients because the client will just see you disappear as well. So it's going to affect the quality of work you get. It's going to affect things like getting mentors in the firm, meaning people that are willing to take you under their wing because they feel like you'll just be out of there. And you just need to understand that how people will see you based on that is really going to make a huge difference. If you were dating someone romantically and that person had been in 5 or 6 relationships of 6 months in a row where they moved in with a significant other and then moved out, you would believe that if you got in that situation, the same thing would probably happen as well. So it's just a sign that something's a little off, not with the people that this person is romantically involved with, but probably the person that is having those problems. So your reasons for moving, again, there are good reasons for moving, and we'll talk about them today, are the quality and type of work that you get, meaning the kind of work you want to do and whether or not the firm has it. There's often structural changes within a law firm that I'll talk about. Sometimes law firms will get rid of practice areas. Sometimes law firms will do things that attorneys that have the business will leave and there's not a lot to do. Other things could be the location. If you want to move homes and you're working in one city and you want to work in your home market where you grew up or something, that or your spouse is from, that's a good reason. And these are often the best reasons, but there's lots of reasons that people move. And as I said earlier, it's often because their work wasn't well received. Often they're asked to leave and again, unable to work with others. And so if you mention these reasons that you're unable to work with others, you are asked to leave and so forth, it's going to be much more difficult for you to get a position, and the law firms are much more likely to use that against you. So there are people that have moved several times and they go into interviews and they just don't get the job and they have a very difficult time getting hired. Now, they eventually get hired. Everybody does if you stick with your search, but at the same time, it becomes much, much harder to get hired once you move several times. So here are the reasons that law firms buy for moving. These are the reasons that I always prepare my candidates for, to understand when they're moving firms, the things that they should say that are going to make law firms more likely to hire them. And so it's important for you to understand these reasons because when you're trying to move firms, if you give these reasons, then law firms are much more likely to hire you than if you don't give these reasons. And so these are the reasons you need to really stick with. You need to write these reasons down so you have them and you can talk about them, because if you give these reasons when you're interviewing with a law firm, the law firm is going to be far more enthusiastic about you than if you don't. These are the best reasons. So the first one is the quality and type of work that you do. It's law firms respect it. If you're moving for the quality and type of legal work, that's actually okay. One reason would be that you may be moving because you want to transition from one practice area to another. Now, this particular reason is a very difficult reason to move, but law firms will understand this some of the time. But if you're trying to move to switch practice areas, it's often extremely difficult to move firms, because the law firms are going to believe that you're probably not going to be committed to a new practice area as well. But it is a reason and that you can give. And one of the best reasons, though, is to move to an employer that is doing more sophisticated legal work. So that's often the reason that works the best. Law firms respect it. If you're moving, for example, corporate attorneys, it was very common then. It's also common now. 25 years ago, corporate attorneys often would they'd be working at smaller firms, and then they'd want to move to larger firms to do more sophisticated work. This type of explanation is often very good. Litigators will move because they're working on litigation that's for smaller type things, to mid-market companies to work at more sophisticated companies. And this is honestly one of the most best reasons you can give. And the idea is, when you're trying to get more sophisticated work, or you're trying to work in a better law firm, that's just showing that you're trying to move up. Meaning, anytime somebody's trying to do something, work on more important work or better work, that's a well-received reason. And the reason is because people want people that are trying to grow. When you're trying to grow, it's different from running away from a problem. You're just trying to put yourself in an area where you're doing more sophisticated work and things. And these reasons are very respected. And it's a very good way for you to be able to get a position when you start talking about the need to do more sophisticated work. Law firms love it. And it's frankly one of the best ways to get a position. Now, one of the reasons that law firms don't like when they hear you're not getting enough work, and this really is one of the most common reasons that attorneys give. They say, there's not enough work in my firm, there's not enough work. And it's really often not a very good reason. And the reason being that most partners in law firms are familiar with other firms around town. They know those firms are likely to have work. And if you're not being given work, then the conclusion often is that if you don't have work, then maybe your work's not good, because they believe that there's always going to be work in the firm. And so what does that mean? If you're not being given work, then someone else is being given work. The best people are being given the work. And if you're not being given the work, you must not be among the best people. And therefore, why would they hire someone that's not among the best people? They would want to hire someone that is. And so it's almost like an advertisement when you're saying there's not enough work, that your work isn't, that you aren't being given enough work because your work's not good. In every law firm, the busiest people are given the most work. When I was in my firm, anyway, I'm not going to talk about getting a lot of work, but people that are good get a lot of work. It's like that in every firm. The busiest people have more work than they can handle, even in firms that are slow. Another thing that's important to understand is if you're not being given enough work, you may be in a position where you're not being given that work because you're not being proactive enough in getting that work. And so if you're not being proactive, then that's creating issues in terms of why aren't you going out and asking for work? Why aren't you trying to get work from people in the firm? What is the problem? What is the problem with you not getting work? Why aren't you getting work? And what does that mean? If you're not getting work, it's a sign many times that you're not able to go out and ask people to be giving you work. And attorneys that don't do that are typically the type of people that are going to not be able to get work from clients. They are just employees, and they're not out and going asking for work. And you're expected as an attorney to be able to create work. And so what does that mean? What it means, being able to create work, is it means that you have the ability to ask people for work all the time, meaning you have the ability to go to partners and see if there's things that you can do to find work to be done. And so what does that mean? By finding work to be done, it means you do an assignment for someone and you suggest some other type of work that you could do because you want to keep the work coming, or you lobby and you go meet with partners that may have work, or you go to social events to try to get work. You do everything you can to get work. And this is what the best attorneys do. They're constantly staying busy. They're staying busy with partners in their firm, getting work from them, but they're also staying busy by getting work from other people that they're not working with. They're just getting work all the time. And this is, by the way, what attorneys are supposed to be doing when they're practicing. Practicing attorneys are supposed to be able to be out there and constantly ask people for work, meaning potential clients. So this is a sign of what type of attorney you're going to be. So if you don't have enough work, it shows that maybe you're doing something wrong. Attorneys that are the best at getting work are often the busiest. And so if you're not doing that, then that's a problem. I just want to bring this up very quickly because it's an interesting story, and it's about someone whose career was literally over because they weren't good at asking for work or getting work. There was a attorney in a big law firm in New York, and it was a branch office of a law firm from Boston or something, I don't remember. And this attorney had gone to Columbia Law School, had done well there, and had been a summer associate at the same big firm. And the firm had this policy where the partner that handed out work in this practice area would send out an email every morning at 8 a.m. giving work and saying, anybody that wants this work, just be the first to respond to this email or something, and you get this work. And this particular attorney, I guess everyone came into that office, usually around 9:30, and said, I'm not going to come in early to get work. This is ridiculous. I'm not here to beg, I'm here to work. And so he didn't get any work and refused to come in early to the office for his first 6 to 8 months there, didn't have any hours. And so they fired him. And he basically said, I wasn't interested in playing this game and so forth. And this isn't even asking for it, just wasn't being there to get work. And so he looked for a job for the next year and a half, and no one would hire him. He wasn't getting any interviews. And even though he had great grades and everything in law school and had been at a great firm, he wasn't getting interviews. And then he had one interview with another big law firm in New York, and he walked in to his first interview with a partner, and the partner looked at his resume and said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're doing here, but you've been unemployed, for too long. We'd never hire you, so we're canceling your interviews. And this is what happened. His whole career ended because he wasn't able to get work, and really stupid. And the guy probably shouldn't have been an attorney. I mean, there was another issue with him, which was that, instead of spending his time looking for a job, he listened to baseball games or something. But you have to be able to ask for work. And then the other one, of course, is something similar to this, is the people that are in charge of doling out work don't like you. This is just another important reason to understand. You need to make the people that are giving you the work feel good about themselves. So a lot of times attorneys will get into law firms and they'll say things like, I didn't think this was ethical to do this assignment because they could have done it differently. Or I pointed out the reasons that this person was wrong, or this person isn't, or very detail-oriented, this partner, or not a good writer, or all these different things that they find wrong with the person that's assigned in charge of giving them work, which is absolutely crazy. These people are the people that are your bread and butter that are giving work to you. And you would have to be insane to be critical of them or to even think critical thoughts of them. When they're giving you work, you have to make them like you. I'll tell you something that's very funny, and I just want you to understand how the best attorneys are. When a law firm is working with outside counsel that's giving them work, and the outside counsel does anything, like they mark up a document or they have some legal opinion about something, what the attorneys almost always do is they say, wow, these are great insights. Thank you. and they'll just tell the person like how smart they are. And they'll try to go out of their way to compliment them if the person's an assistant general counsel to the general counsel, or if the person's a general counsel to the CEO. This is what attorneys do when they get successful in big law firms. They are successful because they're making the people that give them work feel like $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. This is what you do. If you want someone to give you work, you have to make them feel very good about themselves, and they'll continue giving you work. So no, you do never, under any circumstances, don't make the people in charge of giving you work feel badly about themselves. You'd have to be freaking nuts. You'd have to be insane to do this. And people do. So you need to think about this. Anyone that's in charge of giving you work is, as far as you're concerned, is a hero, because if you're not getting work from them, then if you're not making them feel good about it, you're doing something wrong. If you're doing something to help people, to make them feel good about themselves that are giving you work, they're going to give you more work, and your career is going to be in good shape. The first thing is, if there's not enough work and you're not getting enough work, you need to be very clear about explaining this in a way that, if you can, no one has any work, and you need to do that in a way where you're not attacking your current law firm and saying anything negative about it. Some of the ways to explain this would be to just mention something along the lines that there's no work, that there've been like key defections in the legal department, that major work that's occupied you for months or years has gone away, or that the law firm recently lost several clients. And this, by the way, can happen. There was a huge law firm. It was one of the oldest law firms in California. It was from 1880s or something. It was called Heller Ehrman. And that particular law firm had a lot of lines of credit and things it was actually okay for them to have, but they had all these big lines of credit they were using to pay partners and expenses. And they had these 3 or 4 like massive cases that were class actions or something that they were defending, that were bringing in tens of millions of dollars in fees a month. And they all settled at the same time. And their entire firm just ran out of all this cash flow coming in and went out of business. And so this can happen, and people can run out of work. But if your firm is running out of work, the biggest question that the law firm is going to be asking is, are you out of work because the firms are often wondering, is there something wrong with you? Is there something wrong with why you're not getting work? And that's something that you need to understand. But the biggest thing I want to emphasize again is moving to get higher quality work or a different type of legal work often will show ambition and the need for constant improvement. And law firms like that, they do when you're trying to get more important work. And if you can do that, you have to, if you can, try to be going to a firm that has better work or will give you more responsibility along those lines. So what does it mean to get better quality work? It means maybe you're in a big firm where you're doing document review and discovery work as a litigator, and you want to go do trials. And so you want to move to a boutique firm, even though it's a smaller firm. That would be a good reason. Or maybe you're in a firm working on size clients doing general corporate work, and you want to move to a larger firm to do more sophisticated mergers and acquisitions work at a bigger companies. And so there are ways to couch that. And so if you can say that you want to move to be in a larger firm or something, a firm that's doing more sophisticated work, that's going to be very helpful, as opposed to trying to explain your move in a way that doesn't work. And then another one that's an acceptable reason is structural changes in a law firm. Law firms, these are good reasons to move. Sometimes law firms will merge with other firms. That will change the dynamic or how the firm operates, the culture. Offices can close, meaning an entire branch office might be closing or going out of business. Often we're having problems. Key partners can leave, leaving the firm in doubt of improving. And when there's big things going on in a firm that people are hearing about in the legal community, these are actually can be decent reasons that you can move. And people will often, that's a good reason. If you can explain that these are serious enough reasons that there's not opportunities to move, advance, and so forth. One thing that often happens is sometimes law firms will phase out different practice areas. It's very common. It's been very common in the recent past for a lot of law firms, for example, got into patent prosecution. And then the patent prosecution market became something where law firms, everyone else was doing things on fixed fees, and so meaning patents and things on fixed fees, and the law firms couldn't bill hourly, and so they started phasing that out. Employment is another big one. Like employment, for example, used to be something that all big law firms did, but because of the downward pressure on fees there from fees companies, law firms like Jackson Lewis and Littler Mendelson and Gordon Harrison, law firms started phasing that out. So law firms will phase out different practice areas from time to time. Sometimes they will get rid of litigation, or they'll get rid of, you don't know, but if law firms phasing out different practice areas, that can hurt you. And then other things can be affected as well. And when these happens, you do need to you need to understand that may be a good reason for you to learn, to leave. Sometimes if a key like partner leaves and there's not a lot of people left in the office, the law firm may wonder why you weren't taken with them. And if you were doing a good job, why weren't you brought along? Meaning, so many times when important partners leave, they'll take several associates with them. Why weren't you brought along? Then if there's a merger, the law firm may wonder why there was no one there to protect you. The idea is that law firms are looking for signs that maybe you're not indispensable. So if people are leaving, why were you taken? Are you not doing a good enough job? Why aren't they helping you? Because if you're doing such a good job, they would have brought you with you. And the same thing with a merger. Why isn't there anyone helping you? So you have to consider all this from the way that law firms think. If you're doing a good job, if you're indispensable, if you're helping people, if you're making friends with and making the people that give out work like you, then people are going to be protecting you. And so people are looking for these signs. And so I want you to understand that law firms are looking to see, are you the type of person that's able to get work? Are you the type of person that makes the people giving you work feel good? All of these sorts of things, because if you're doing all those things, then the chances are you're going to have access to work, and there are going to be people protecting you, and there's going to be people taking you with them when these things happen. So you just need to understand like how law firms are thinking of you, and they're thinking of these things. And you have to be able to take all this stuff into account and know how the law firm that's interviewing you is thinking about it. And so you just need to understand how all this is happening. And law firms that close or have problems are often, if there's people that they're working for that like their work, will figure out a way how to get them a job or figure out a way to take them with them. I believe that if you're able to explain structural changes in a way that makes sense to the law firm, then things can work. But you always have to be considerate of what they're thinking in the background, why those structural changes haven't benefited you. You need to just understand all of this, and you need to put yourself in the right position. So location is often a very good reason for moving. Something that I've noticed, and I want to make very clear to you, this could save your career, what I'm saying right now. Many times when you move within a market, so let's say you're in Los Angeles and you want to move to another firm in Los Angeles. If you want to move home, say you're from, I don't know what a good area would be, Cleveland. Say you grew up in Cleveland and your whole family's in Cleveland and you're in Los Angeles, and you tell firms in Cleveland that you're moving there because your parents are there and you grew up there, you're going to get a lot more interviews than you would if you were just looking around Los Angeles. The reason is because there's no question about your work performance. They think you're just moving home. There's no question about your work performance. There's no question about loyalty and things like that because they believe you're moving home. There's no question about stability because they believe you're going to move back to that area and you're moving back there because you want to be stable and you want to raise a family and a house and everything. And so that reason is very good. So if you're experiencing issues in your market and you decide you are seriously going to look for a job someplace where your spouse is from or where you're from, that's actually a very good reason because you can often, often have a much better chance of getting a position. Sometimes even within a city, a geographic move is okay. If it's just completely obvious, that move is going to make sense. In LA, there's like the West Side, and then there's downtown, and so because of those different areas, the traffic can just be extreme going between them. So if you were working downtown, you lived on the West Side, you told law firms that you wanted to move because you wanted to be closer, that actually is in a lot of cases an okay reason. But typically major geographic moves, like when you're moving from one part of the city to in one part of the country to another, are great because the law firm is not going to necessarily question your loyalty and things, and they're going to look at it as more stable. And just to be very clear about how good this reason is and how well it works, people that do things like they want to move back to Cleveland will get, if they're a big firm, might get 10 interviews. Whereas if they were just trying to move around in Los Angeles, they might be lucky to get, I don't know, 3 or 4, because the law firms are just not as open to that. And I don't know how to explain it to you in any different terms. It just looks like you're a better attorney when you're moving back to a market where you're from, and there's fewer questions about how you're going to perform there. And law firms, of course, don't like things like people when they say they move somewhere to get better weather, they move somewhere for a change of scenery, or they're moving to join a girlfriend. I don't think spouse is accurate. I think joining a spouse is actually a good reason. Something along those reasons that isn't necessarily suggests permanence, and they like being closer to family. And especially when you're moving from a large city to a smaller market, people in smaller markets often feel a little bit of sense of inferiority to people from larger markets. And so if someone wants to come from a larger market to a smaller market, it kind of gives them a sense of affirmation that it's better to be in the smaller market, and also that you're likely to stay in the smaller market. Who wouldn't want to be in a smaller market that's not sophisticated? Then who would want that? And so you would only want that if there was a reason that you would stay there. So then the other thing is it just shows often that you're ambitious and you got very good experience in a larger market, and now you're taking that to a smaller market. Sometimes you can explain it, and this is very true. It's very difficult many times once you're established in your career to move from a smaller market to a major market, and therefore you can explain it that way. I did want to bring up just briefly one thing that I do think is important to understand. This is if you're an early career attorney, it is much harder to get a job in a larger market after you've been in a smaller market for a while. I see attorneys all day, every day, that are in markets like Missouri or Kansas City and places, I don't know, San Antonio, Texas and things, and decide, hey, everyone seems to say, oh, I want to go work in Washington, D.C. in markets like that. And it's very difficult to move to a lot of major markets once you've made a decision to start your career in a smaller market. It's just much more difficult. It's much easier to go from a major market to a smaller market. So if you're early in your career, you're often going to be much better starting first in a major market and then moving to a smaller market later, if that's what you want to do. And then you can also discuss it that way. And again, I've talked a little bit about moving home, but that's often is a very good reason. And reasons like a change of scenery or better weather is often things that make it seem like you're unlikely to stay. And it's very common for people to try to move to different areas and then only be not like where they're moving when they move there again. I saw an attorney this morning that had gone to a major law school, and then had moved to a law firm in Wyoming right after law school, lasted there about 6 months. And I thought that was funny because the way the person's resume read, I didn't think they would stay there. Attorneys move all the time to different markets. So it's very common for attorneys, for example, to want to move to Hawaii to practice law. They never stay. It's very common in the winter for people in New York to decide they want to interview with law firms in Los Angeles. But law firms get burned a lot of times when people are moving for the wrong reasons, like weather, change of scenery, and that sort of thing. And again, saying you want to move for weather and things is just it's going to show that you're interested in other things that that aren't really related to your career and work. And again, smaller towns, a lot of times people that move there aren't happy as well. So I don't want to talk too much about this, but I think you get the idea that moving for the wrong reasons from a location standpoint are not the smartest thing, and especially in poor economic climates and that sort of thing. I don't want to talk too much about this next topic, but there's some generalizations that employers have that if you're trying to relocate for a spouse's career, that's something that employers don't necessarily, they believe, and I'm not trying to get myself in trouble here, but if you're saying that you're moving because your spouse is doing something in their career, meaning the spouse has got a job in another city or something along those lines, law firms do not like that as much as if they were to hear that it gives them the idea that you might relocate again if their spouse moves. That's often not a good thing. I had one woman, just so you can understand that was in San Diego, and her husband was in the Navy, and she had moved there from Maryland, Annapolis or something, and then moved to San Diego. And she was interviewing with law firms and said, my husband's in the military, and it was difficult for her to get positions because it looked like she would move no matter what if her husband got in that position. That is not something. I mean, law firms want to feel that you're moving, that your spouse will move with you. And I'm not saying this applies to, could be a man relocating to be close to his spouse with some sort of career, but law firms want to get the idea that you're going to stay someplace and to settle down. And so the whole idea of a law firm is a law firm, and this is just how employers think. A law firm wants to believe that if they hire you, you're going to stay, and they're going to have kind of control over you from a location standpoint. Like you're going to be more likely to stay there because you have some sort of connection to the area. And again, these are some things, I don't want to get too far into this and move on, but yes. So you just have to make sure that a law firm understands that your kind of priority is that your family priority is your career and not the other way around. And that's one reason that you're obviously not supposed to talk about people don't getting asked questions about your spouse and personal life and things in interviews. But these are things that people do think about and can affect whether or not you're hired. And just think about it from a law firm's point of view, and then I'll move on to the next topic. But if you were a law firm and you were hiring one person that had moved a couple times because their spouse had moved, and then that's one person you had to choose from, and then you had to choose from another person that was from the area and had bought a house and was settled down there and had family in that area, you would probably choose the person that's more settled over the person that has to move for their spouse. And this is just how employers think. It's business and nothing to get too wound up about. But again, the reasons you're moving an employer are something that's a minefield and you need to be very careful about. You want to be careful about spending too much time discussing it. If you tell, again, people that employers that your work was not well received, or there are problems with their work, that you're unable to get along with others, you're asked to leave, it's not going to help you. Most law firms are going to presume that you left for one of these reasons if you've moved several times. And so I want to go through how law firms think about this, cover some things that I haven't covered so far. But if you're moving because your work wasn't well received, you need to understand a little bit about this before how you explain it to employers. It's very common for different types of employers to have different standards. Some insurance defense attorneys, at the very worst insurance defense firms, there's some insurance defense firms that are frankly outstanding, and the work quality is, and as a matter of fact, I would say probably more than 50% are. But at some insurance defense firms, it's okay to turn in work with typos and grammatical errors and so forth. But at other firms, that could be you could get fired for just some small typographical errors. In some law firms, there's very high standards that could be very difficult for anyone to meet with certain partners. But it's also important to understand that when the economy is very bad, it is difficult to get work in certain firms. So you could be very harshly reviewed then in a way that you normally wouldn't when things are busy. When things are busy in law firms, by the way, the law firms are very nice in the reviews. When it's hard to get people, when there's a lot of pressure in the market, and then when things get bad, they often give very poor reviews. So it's important to understand. But larger law firms and the most prestigious law firms will often have very high standards for the work, much more higher than other types of employers. And then you can often feel a great deal of inadequacy, especially as a young attorney, because your work will be very highly, much more criticized than it would be at a lot of other firms. And they have to have very high standards for their work because large law firms, that's what their brand's about. So people have a good understanding of the kind of work that's going to come out from certain firms. This is why when you're thinking of law firms and you're thinking of certain names of law firms, they mean something to you. And often that meaning has come from the types of people that they hire, the types of people they don't hire, the types of what it takes to stay in a firm like that. And so those firms often have very high standards. Another reason, I don't want to get too far into it, but the largest law firms have higher standards because the client is very good. The client's looking over the work. The clients are general counsels and assistant general counsels and people in the company's legal department that are often also out of very large firms. So they hold things to that same standard. And it's important to understand that in the largest firms and in terms of your work product and your thinking processes, there's going to be very high standards and you'll be expected to develop your skills to the point where your work isn't severely criticized and it really, by the time you're in your third year, your work should be pretty well received. And I would say that if you are in your first couple of years of work, you're more likely to have gotten a very harsh criticism and that you shouldn't necessarily leave a law firm because of that. It's your work. Part of being trained to be a good attorney is often about learning how to do very high quality work. I'll tell you just a quick story. This isn't something that's going to apply to everyone, but I wanted you to understand it. When I was at my second law firm, it doesn't matter what firm it was at, but it was a Los Angeles office of a large New York law firm that no longer is in existence. It was called Dewey Ballantine. And they had hired lateral partners from these big firms like Gibson and Latham and things around LA. And one of the attorneys that was in charge of the first and second year associates was this person from one of those big firms. And it wasn't one of those, but it was a very large, prestigious, well-known Los Angeles-based national law firm. And he used to go into the offices of the first and second year attorneys, close the door, and just completely spend an hour with them, telling them just how awful their work was and all the mistakes that they made. And I knew this because I was in the office next door to one of these junior attorneys. And he apparently would do this to all of them. And it was considered like something that this big firm did to all its new attorneys and how he was trained and how they were trained. So a lot of times at big firms, they're going to come in and give you very severe criticism of your work early in your career with the expectation that you will become paranoid and very concerned about how the work you do and the logic and how well it's thought out. And so you just need to understand that if that's happening to you, doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to lose your job or that you should leave because of that. It's actually something that you should appreciate, because if a law firm has very high standards, you're going to move to those high standards as well. And your professional abilities are going to improve. So being upset about that and moving firms because of that is often a huge mistake. It's something that's happening to a lot of junior attorneys in their firms. And it's probably, if that was happening to you and you feel like your confidence has been shot or something, it's important to understand this is just an opportunity to improve. And then you thought of much better in your firm because of that. And I think a lot of attorneys who move very early in their careers, especially in their first few years or even later when they get into firms where there's a different quality of work expected, are moving because they feel like their work has been criticized. Even later attorneys, they may be at one firm and then they move to a different firm where the work quality is critiqued much more severely. And when they do that, they feel like there's something wrong with them, that they've made a big mistake, that the firm's ganging up on them. And really, it's just an opportunity for you to get much better. And if that's happening to you, you should do everything you can to move up to that standard of what you're expected. And then once you do that, you're going to be much, much better off. And just so you understand that if you are facing harsh criticism, a lot of other attorneys are going to also be experiencing the same thing. And so it's just an opportunity to improve. And by the way, when your work is criticized harshly, you improve your work, you will be respected and people will like you for doing that are above you. It doesn't mean that they're going to hate you forever. I know that a lot of attorneys on these webinars each week, they say that they got fired for making a mistake or something on a deadline, and that can happen. But as a general rule, all these things are teaching you to be extremely careful and you're not always going to lose jobs for this reason. But I would say that moving because you feel like your work was criticized or you're being held to a harsh standard is really just an opportunity to improve. And you can improve and get beyond it to the way that law firm expects you to, quality of work you do. And then once you're able to do that, you're going to be in a much better shape. And a lot of attorneys, I will say, just this is really the reason that a lot of them move. They don't really say it is. They just feel like they need to start over or something. This has happened, and that's not necessarily the case. You can, after a couple of years when your work gets really good, you'll know whether or not these criticisms were necessarily justified and if it's something you can move on from later. And so I just never recommend leaving because of that right away. And it's certainly not something that you want to bring up. You need to understand if you're giving that indication that there's problems with your work or people are critiquing your work at one firm, then the law firm is going to believe that's probably going to happen with them as well. Sometimes people will move firms because they continually have problems with their work and people are continually critiquing their work. And that's also something you need to be concerned about as well. You don't move when people are saying bad things about your work. You improve your work. Moving firms, the idea that your work's not going to be criticized at the next firm is something to be very concerned about. And I will say this is an important component, and this may be someone that you're like as well. What happens to a lot of attorneys is that they don't like being micromanaged. They want to feel like they're independent. They want to feel like they're in control. They want to feel like people are that no one's telling them what to do, that they're independent, not micromanaged. And when people start coming down and critiquing the work, it's just a reminder that they're not that. And then they feel like their self-confidence is somehow being attacked. And the point is when your work is being critiqued and when you're feeling these negative feelings about it, this is the same standard that clients are going to hold your work to. This is the same things that you need to do in order to improve. And if you're not doing these things, then it's going to hurt you in the long run. So you always need to be aware, how do people view me? How do people view my work? And so when you get into a new legal environment, whatever that work is, and if you're turning out poor work or work that someone is being able to critique, that's something that's going to follow you the rest of your career if you don't do things the way you're supposed to. So there are people that you would probably talk to in the course of your job or life that have absolutely horrible grammar. They say words incorrectly. And you pick it up. You notice it right away, and you're like, "Wow!" Didn't no one ever tell them about did anybody ever critique them about their grammar? Because that's just a sign that they're at a certain level if they're talking like that. It's a sign of maybe not being educated or all sorts of stuff like that. So that's something, if they were critiqued on it, that would be a good thing, and they would be probably better people for it. There are people that have horrible table manners that just do some of the most disgusting things. If you were doing that as well, then would you want someone to tell you about it? So all these things, when your work's being critiqued, and you need to always take your work to the next level, and you cannot leave because someone's telling you that you're doing something wrong. You need to think, is this correct? How can I improve? And you don't want employers to think that you're not someone that's going to improve. You just need to fix this. And it's very important. Another reason, this is a very important one that people leave that you don't want to talk about, is being unable to get along with others. And every law firm has politics, and every law firm has certain types of people in it compared to every organization has certain types of people in it. And every office environment has certain types of people in it, that some that are easy to get along with and others that aren't. If you want to succeed in these environments, then you need to be able to, any environment, you need to be able to navigate different types of situations. You need to be able to get along with all types of people. And just so you understand, if you want to be a lawyer and you want to represent clients, you're going to have clients that are Democrats. You're going to have clients that are Republicans. You're going to have clients that believe in different things that you may not support. They may be pro-drug or anti-drug. I don't know. They may be criminals. They may be not criminals. They may be one religion. You have to be able to get along with all types of people. A lawyer's job is to represent people and to take anybody's side. And so you have to be able to do the same with people. And you have to be able to understand different types of personalities and be able to work with different types of people. And all that is very important. Getting along with others is one of the most important aspects of working for someone else. And people want to hire people that get along with others. Are you a positive person? Are you someone that lifts up people around them and makes people and environments feel good? Or are you someone that is more toxic and critical of people? And is that what you want to be? Do you want to be the type of person, or do you want to be the type of person that lifts people up? You have a choice. Are you the type of person that tends to navigate towards people that don't like their organizations and people that are negative and have criticism? Or are you the type of person that gravitates towards people that just try to be positive and not get involved in that sort of stuff? There are people that you can go up to and you can complain about things, and they won't take your side. They won't sympathize. They'll just be like, oh, whatever, and walk away. One of the most successful guys I know of, and anyway, it doesn't matter what he became, but he became someone I went to high school with him, and he became an important national figure. He's on television all the time, and it doesn't matter who he is, but he was not a smart guy. He was someone that was at the bottom of my high school class and literally not smart. I don't know how to even put it, but he had this characteristic where he never would participate in any negative conversation. He never would say anything negative about anyone. He would point out positive aspects of people. And if you tried to talk to him about negative stuff, he would just walk away. And so these types of people and these characteristics can take you a long way. And I don't know how to say it. Are you part of the light, and are you part of someone that's in part of goodness and non-judgmental, or are you part of the darkness? And so there are law firms where people can survive based on that. And attorneys spend countless hours with each other. And so if you go around people, are you looking for personality conflicts? Are you judging people because they're different than you? Are you all these sorts of things? I remember I was working in a law firm, and this was my first law firm that I worked in. And there was a partner I was working with, and I felt like he was just I realized he didn't have a lot of business. He had to get business from others. I knew that he was sleeping with a first-year associate that I was friends with. There was all sorts of stuff going on with this guy. And at one point, I went to my second law firm, and I had great relationships with the first one, but I left for a firm that I thought I was going to be more successful in. And the head of the law, I talked to a friend of mine, his partner, he's got to come back. And I was thinking about coming back. And he circulated a email to other partners, see if it was okay. And this particular partner that I was negative with and stuff like that approached it. And you need to understand that law firms have to want people in there that are going to get along, and they don't want to see personality conflicts. And if you're critical of any environment you're in, and you're critical to the people there, and you can't get along with others, and you're a toxic force, law firms aren't going to like you. And so if you explain your politics, or you're getting along with others, law firms that you're interviewing with, or you're not getting along, and you give people that impression, they're not going to like you. And they're going to think you're going to do the same thing there. And you probably will. Just think about the people are there people that are typically positive, or are there people that are typically negative? Are people there's people that drag down environments, there's people that build them up. And so you never want to badmouth your current employer. You need to make sure that you have the ability to integrate yourself into the right environment and do well. You need to seem that you're someone that's able to get along with others. And I just want to bring this up too. And this is a piece of advice that could change your life and change your career. You need to figure out wherever you go in whatever environment that you want to be in, you need to understand that your ability to get along with others is going to influence the entire course of your career. People advance people that they like. People advance people that make them feel good about themselves. Organizations advance people that seem like they're supporting the goals of the organization. And so anytime you see yourself as us, me against them, or us against them, you're automatically in for a tough ride in your career. I just want you to make sure you understand that. If your attitude towards where you were is us against them, meaning it's me against to get the most money, it's me against people not giving me the best hours or making me work long hours, it's me and others against the management of the law firm. It's just crazy. Like, this is the exact opposite that you want to be. I remember I was at this dinner with a recruiter of mine and a candidate that she had placed. And it was a big law firm. I don't know, was it Winston Strawn? I don't remember what it was. And this attorney that she had placed had gone to University of Chicago Law School, had been at the top of his class. And he met with her and they were having dinner. And he was explaining that he had to leave this firm because this law firm was just, instead of allowing them to park in the building, they had, even though they were paying for parking, they had asked them to park in another lot across the street. And this is just, everyone there just thought it was horrible and they were going to, and he definitely needed to find a new job. But this sort of attitude, like being us against them if you're against the management of the firm or you're against, I don't know, you can't do it. You need to be someone that's on the side of the people that are paying you. And because you're only going to advance for them if you're like that. They're only going to give you work if you're on their side. And you just need to make sure that you understand that you're not against the law firm and the system. You're for the law firm. You're able to get along with others. And again, law firms want people that are hardworking, flexible, and have the ability to deal with colleagues and so forth and clients, and ultimately have key skills to understand all the situation. And you do not want to go into legal environments and have tension. You want to be someone that's able to, even people that have tension, to ask to just diffuse it with supervisors, with others, to not get involved in politics, to not take sides with things. And so you have to be able to do that. And you have to look like someone that's going to do that. And you just need to understand it. If you start talking about the fact that you don't like certain people there because of their policies about this or that, then you're going to get in trouble. And I remember I had this attorney and that was representing me in something, and I'm not going to get too far into it, but he was saying, what are we going to do and he just assumed that I supported Bernie Sanders, which I didn't really know much about Bernie Sanders. I'm not that involved in politics, but he started talking about all the stuff. We need to get universal income. And it wasn't stuff that I necessarily agreed with, not because I don't support Bernie Sanders, but he was just taking. And so when you start taking stances on things and you don't get along with other types of people because of things, then you're probably going to do that in your next legal environment. And so you need to just understand that you just have to make sure that you're someone that looks like you're going to get along with others. Now, the final one is just being asked to leave. Sometimes employers will ask you to leave. They'll ask you to leave for reasons you may not understand sometimes. And you also need to understand that it's very common for attorneys to get fired at some point in their careers. Even the best attorneys get fired. I was talking to a woman that was a partner in a major law firm, and she was at a law firm called Cravath, and basically said everyone is pretty much fired when they get too senior. The firm's not doing that anymore. They recently came out with a non-equity partner, but the point is that people will get fired, and it's very common for attorneys to get fired no matter how good they are at different stages of their career. It's nothing to worry about, but it's something you don't want to talk about. And the idea, especially lower level employees, is often say to the quality of the work. But if you're fired for a reason like that, it's actually, if they had enough business, they probably wouldn't be firing you. So they would tolerate some issues, they would train you, but you just have to understand that. Sometimes if you're leaving due to your seniority, you may be asked to leave for those reasons. You have to understand that's not always because of the quality of your work. It could be just because that's what law firms do. But at the same time, if you're asked to leave for your seniority, it's often because you haven't been able to generate business and you haven't been able to continue to get work. So there are senior attorneys in law firms that are so good at doing work that they're going to be sponsored by other attorneys to be a partner and so forth. So you have to understand that. And then very few legal employers are actually going to ask you to leave because your work quality is poor, but it can happen. But the idea is if you're asked to leave law firms and you are, then the law firm is always thinking to themselves, why were you asked to leave? And you just have to be very careful about how you're portraying that reason, meaning it could be something about your personality, it could be something about your work, it could be your inability to get work. And so all the things that I talked about, these really need to be de-emphasized. They're always not going to ask you that question, but they're going to be very concerned about whether or not you were asked to leave for those reasons or you're asked to leave. Because if you're asked to leave, then they are going to believe that there's a problem with you and won't hire you. I'll tell you about a quick thing that happened to me that was very interesting. So when I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to stay working in a large law firm or whether I wanted to work in another law firm or whether I wanted to get into this business, I remember I interviewed with a bunch of firms and I was interviewing with one firm. I think it was White & Case, and I had gone in for a screening interview and then I'd gone in for a full day interview, and things had gone very well. And the person they're probably going to make you an offer, but they just wanted to come in. And so I'd gone into the office and the meeting was just with this young, very talented recruiting coordinator. And she sat there talking with me and asking if she was trying to act like she was my friend and just talking to me about stuff. So I was talking to her for 45 minutes and then she just dropped this question. So you think, are you looking because you have to, are you being asked to leave or something like that? And the way she said it was that was really on a piece of information that she wanted to get. And so the idea being that if I'd been asked to leave, I wouldn't have gotten an offer. And so the law firms do not like that if you're asked to leave it. It's something just to understand. I did want to come up with just tell you a couple of things about law firms. So most of the time, if you're at a large law firm and you're looking for a job where you're asked to leave, it's the large law firm will often not say anything about it. They will be nice and give you good recommendations. Smaller law firms will often give you poor recommendations. The idea being, I think that just institutionally, the large law firms believe that everyone that works there should get a good recommendation. Smaller law firms won't. If you are asked to leave a large law firm, you really don't have to worry most of the time about them saying anything, whereas it doesn't happen with the smallest law firms as much. Again, you typically don't get negative recommendations from those law firms. So just in brief, and then I'll take a short break and we'll do questions. If you've moved too many times within a short time span, legal employers are going to believe that you're probably going to move again. So you have to be very careful of that. You have to understand that job hopping and so forth is often unrelated to the reasons that are acceptable. So you have to understand that. And again, there's a lot of different reasons for moving, but the unacceptable big thing to understand about why people move is that they're often moving because there's something wrong with them. They're unstable. They may not be a good attorney, and you need to make sure that you're covering up those reasons. There's nothing wrong with changing jobs, but if you do it too much, it's going to make it difficult for you to get new positions. When law firms see a lot of that, they're going to believe that it's due to lack of commitment. And you have to be very careful about talking about that in interviews. And law firms really need a sense that you're stable and dependable. And so that's really the gist of it. I'll answer more questions about this because I'm sure there's people here that have had those questions, but it's very important when you have periods of unemployment, when you're looking for jobs, to understand how you can frame these answers in a way that doesn't show that you're unable to get along with people, doesn't show that there's problems with your work, doesn't show that you've been asked to leave. And this honestly is the most important, one of the most important things that you could learn as an attorney trying to get new jobs, because every move you have, every time you're moving firms, every interview you have, your objective is to get over this. And the only way to get over it is to give the right answers. And if you're not giving the right answers, you're going to be in trouble. And you're able to get better jobs by understanding how to frame these questions. And my biggest piece of advice is to try to frame every movement in the way that you're trying to get into a firm that better matches your interests or your strengths, meaning this next law firm is going to really help you be someone that it's going to really make you you're going to become, it's going to be a better fit for your interest, a better fit for your growth. If you're moving to a better fit for your stability, if you're moving back to a market, a better fit for what you want to do as opposed to where you're at. And then framing moves that there might have been structural changes in the firm and so forth that made that happen, or where all the work had gone away. So that's the gist of what I'm talking about. All right, so just give me 1 second here and I'll start the questions. All right, see here, first question. Oh, by the way, when you ask questions, sometimes people are worried that they're signed in to, but I will not show your name as if your name shows up, so you can ask anything that you want. Okay, so the first question is, let's see here. In situations where job hopping was due to cultural mismatches or changes in firm dynamics, how do I tactfully address these reasons without sounding negative during an interview? Okay, so cultural mismatches are one thing to be concerned about. The problem with cultural mismatches is if that's what makes it, if that's what you need is a cultural match, then the concern of the law firm is going to be that the next law firm, if the cultural mismatches happen there, that you're going to have problems. Law firms are afraid, by the way, of getting sued. They're afraid of people that are looking for problems in different places. And so they do not want to feel like that's going to be an issue with you if you go to work there. So what does that mean? That means that you may say something that it was a frat boy culture, that it was, I don't know, but you could say all sorts of things that could make law firms feel like if they're not like that you're going to have problems with them and may come after them, or you may switch firms. So you have to make it look like you're able to get along in pretty much any type of environment. And that's not going to be, you're not going to have problems there. So this is something that law firms are concerned about. Now, there's nothing wrong with being offended by certain types of people. There's nothing wrong with feeling like that you need to stick up for yourself if someone makes a comment that you don't like, or if you believe someone is on one side of some political issue and that you're not. So you can certainly be offended by that, but your job really is, and I hate to say this, is to try to keep that stuff to yourself. There are people that will just absolutely hate Democrats, and there are people that absolutely hate Republicans. There are people in different political parties that are on one side of an issue more than others. So you just have to be very careful about that. If you start falling into only working with people that are coming from a certain type of cultural background or have certain types of opinions, then you have to be very careful about that. Firm dynamics are always changing. So one thing I did want to bring up that's very interesting is attorneys will also often say stuff like they're at a major law firm and they'll say this changed about the culture, this changed about the culture, but the law firm might be 100 years old and have gone through countless things like that. So you just need to be very careful about how you frame that. You just try to make any new firm you go to as a way where you feel like there's more opportunity at that firm than where you're at for whatever reasons. And I don't know what those reasons would be, but you want to make sure that you frame the reasons that you're able to get more work, you're able to get better work, you're able to get more opportunity, you're able to get more work that matches what you want to do, you're able to get more sophisticated work. Those are the things that you want to talk about, because if you start talking about culture and things, then the law firm may say, hey, but we're like that too. We have people here like that. And so you just need to be very careful about those sorts of issues as well. Okay, so here. How do you best explain to prospective employers that you left because your last firm did not have enough work to keep you busy and you were not supported in your own client development activities? Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about a few things with this question, and this is actually a good question. No, client development. Okay, so this great question. So I want to make sure that I explain this question the best way I can. So anytime there's not enough work, your job is to find work. So it doesn't matter what type of work it is. You need to go out and find work to be done or create work. So the job of an attorney, by the way, is to create work. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a client, you need to always have all sorts of work that can be done if that client has a budget to do it. Like you need to make sure you do everything you can to get as much work as you can from your client and to make work, or to go out and try to meet new clients to give you work. So the job of attorneys is to create work. So you need to create work in your own firm. You need to find things to be done. If there isn't work to be done, you should be going and talking to, writing articles or doing things to help the firm with. You just need to stay busy and always doing whatever you can to get work. So not enough work means that you weren't good at finding work. That also means you can sometimes go and find people in different practice areas and things. So bringing up there's not enough work is often not the best way of approaching things, but sometimes there legitimately is not enough work, meaning partners may have left, cases may have settled. There may be issues with a law firm having a product market fit. For example, the billing rates might be too high for the market. It may be a branch office where there's not enough work because all the work is coming from the main office. So sometimes those explanations can work. You have to decide if, when you're answering that question, when you're being asked that question and given that answer, is if it's something that any way reflects on you. So it's not going to reflect on you if partners that had a lot of work leave and weren't allowed to take any associates with them. It's not going to reflect negatively on you if the firm is a branch office that gets all its work from the main office and they stop giving it work. It's not going to reflect on you if the firm loses a major client that was giving you most of the work. It's not going to reflect on you if the 50 people were busy on some class action and the class action goes away. There's only you have to just decide how it's going to reflect on you. Now, this next one about client development support, I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to be nice about this. You say, what if you had the best kind of perspective that you weren't supporting your client development activities? So client development, and this is, again, the answer to this particular question could change the course of your life and your career, because I want to give you some very direct and clear answers about client development support and critiquing your own firm and what your responsibilities are. Your responsibility is to do client development. It's not the firm's responsibility. It's 100% your responsibility. I remember I was meeting with an incredibly successful attorney, a partner in a major law firm, and someone that has tens of millions of dollars in business. And I remember the person telling me the story that they would make sure that they build at least 2,500 hours a year in their law firm. And then they would make sure that they spent at least another 2,500 hours a year. This is from the time they were a junior associate, going out and doing whatever they could to develop clients. And so that meant that they would basically be traveling around their city, meeting with prospective clients and doing whatever they possibly could to put themselves in a position where they were developing business and trying to basically become a business generator. This isn't something the firm told them to do. This isn't something that anyone supported them doing. Maybe they got reimbursed for some expenses, but this is their job. So your job as an attorney, from the time you're a young attorney up until the time you're a partner, is to spend time doing whatever you can to develop clients. If you don't do, that's your decision. You may want to go home at night and spend time with your family, which I don't fault you for. You may want to work out every day. I don't know what you want to do, but if you choose to spend your time doing client development, it's going to pay dividends, and it's something that you need to do. But no, law firms do not make it. I do not want to hear that you didn't get any client development support. It is your responsibility. The other thing I just wanted to bring up real briefly is a lot of times law firms will make non-equity partners, and the non-equity partner is the position. This is what it is. Some law firms will do it just because it's a big profit center having non-equity partners, and they have a lot of work that they're getting from big clients. And so they give it to people they call partners, and those partners are in a bit, anyway, I think you understand what I'm saying. They're not real partners. They just have that title so they can be billed out at more money and other things to the firm, but they're not equity partners. So what is a non-equity partner? A non-equity partner, often they make you an equity partner when you build like an incredible number of hours and you do really good work. They'll make you a non-equity partner. But in many firms, a non-equity partner is basically saying, okay, we're going to pay you the same salary that or more than you were making as an associate. We'll pay you more money, but this is your opportunity to go out and with this title and do whatever you can to start generating business. And so a lot of times people will take that and they'll just think, now I'm a partner, that's it. Instead of going out and giving everything that they have to generating as much business as they possibly can. And that's really what you should be doing with that title, is going out and doing that. And then if you don't do it, then eventually you're going to lose your job. So you have to be very careful about everyone's responsibility as an attorney. If you want to be successful in a law firm in the long run, is to really figure out what you can do to spend a lot of your time generating business. If you don't want to do that and you have other priorities for your career in life, that's your decision, but it's not something that's going to benefit you in the long run if you do that. So you just need to be very careful. If you want to be in a law firm, you need to spend time developing clients. It's hugely important because it will give you security, all sorts of things. I don't want to answer this question in too much more detail, but the benefit of having business as a partner is it gives you it's basically you have your own business, and the law firm is someone that services your work, that gives you associates and does your billing and all these things for you. So they basically are there to, law firm supports your business and everything you're doing. If you don't do this and you think you don't want to generate business, then you're basically working for someone else. If you have business, you can go wherever you want and you can work in lots of different places, and law firms will basically be there to support you and to give you people and all that sort of thing. Okay, how do I tell potential employers about moving jobs because of family relocations without making it seem like I don't have control over my career? I'm worried firms might not like it, thinking I'm not committed, as you mentioned in this webinar. Should I be worried it could hurt my chances? It can. You basically have two options when you're moving firms. You can look like permanent employee, or you can look like a partner or a partner in the business. So you have two choices. You can, and this would be called like a builder. This would be called someone who follows builders. There's a lot of different ways you could follow a builder. You could frame this, but what am I saying here? So an employee, a builder is someone that shows up in a firm, and someone that's going to generate business, someone that's going to be there and help the firm grow and do all these sorts of things. And that's what a partner, a builder in a business is. It's someone that does all these things. An employee is someone who just follows builders and is dependent on builders for work, and I guess for who works for builders, right? Who works for builders. And that's what you are. So you can certainly get a job and if you keep moving as a permanent employee, but it's basically saying that you're always going to be someone who's going to work for builders. You're always going to be someone that isn't contributing probably in the way that a builder would be. I mean, a builder is going to bring in business. They're going to commit. They're going to commit to the firm and all that sort of thing. So that's all you need to be really concerned about, is what you look like. If you don't look like a builder and you look like someone that's not going to be there in the long run, you're going to have less security. They're going to be someone that is always going to be dependent upon work for others. And the problem with all this is I've seen a lot of women that kind of put themselves in this permanent category. I've seen men that do it, and it's a hard life. I want to just make sure everyone understands. And this is a very important point, but I'm doing my best to making myself clear. When you look like someone that's always going to be an employee and you do it throughout your career, you're always going to be dependent on others for work. You're never going to be paid as much money as you can. You're always going to be the first person to be let go when things slow down. You're always going to have a harder, more difficult time finding a job. You're always going to feel less secure. It's not the kind of existence that a lot of people want. Now, some people do. Some people insist on being an employee. And the reason they do that, women that are often that want to have freedom to raise children, men there's all sorts of reasons that men would do it too. Like they just aren't committed at a certain level. That's one reason. So if you want to be a permanent employee, that's up to you. But if you start looking like a permanent employee, you're going to get less respect. You're going to get less work. You're going to be less partners and so forth. You're just not going to have as good of a career. You're always going to be paid less than you could be making. You're always going to have issues and problems that you wouldn't have if you look like a partner. Partners are people that are doing things, are creating value for clients, are bringing in business, are doing things that are building up the name of the firm and all sorts of stuff like that. So if that's what if you become someone that's a builder as opposed to someone who works for builders, then you're going to have a much better chance. So can you become a builder if you're moving a lot? Yes, you just have to learn how do you carve out business? How do you do all these things that are going to make you look more successful in the minds of people that you're working for? Okay, let's see. Okay, so this particular question. As a former partner of law firms and general counsel of banks, I respectfully oppose your suggestion that attorneys unable to achieve quality work product, including grammatical proficiency, should remain in any position anywhere. And I oppose that too. I don't think that I was saying that, but what I did mean, and again, if I did mean this, I certainly would say you're wrong, but I don't think that everyone has to have the best quality work. I don't think everyone has to have grammatical proficiency. No, I didn't say they shouldn't remain in a position. The reason I was giving for grammatical proficiency and so forth is that I was saying that's something that can often make you look weak. But make it, if you're talking that way consistently, it can bring up some, people will judge you on it. What I did want to bring up, and this is in support of your point, and I think it's very interesting. I once worked for an attorney that literally had never lost a case. And the reason I think that was because he would get a legal issue. His clients would have some legal issue, and he would sit there and go in such detail that he would always find something that would end up making his client win. It was absolutely incredible. But what was interesting about him as well is he couldn't write. He was a graduate of Columbia Law School. He'd been a partner in a couple other huge firms, and he literally couldn't. I don't know. I think he was dyslexic, but he never fixed. I don't know, but he was literally, I think, probably one of the best attorneys I've ever seen, that he could not effectively. So other people would write for him, and then he would sometimes try to write down what he wanted people to write. And there was an attorney that I remember worked for him and was very critical of the way he wrote, and he just stopped giving him work. But the point is that, yes, you don't have to achieve the best quality work, and you can be a very good attorney without it. I do think that, so I don't think I was working. I don't think that was really my point. But if I did say that, I certainly was not correct, because I don't believe that. I think that it's one thing that you need to be, but I think it has some effect. Okay, let's see. All right. How can I work on rebuilding or preserving a positive professional image when talking about past job experience that might have not have been in the best terms? I want to ensure that I come across as someone who is not only open and honest about my previous challenges, but also is someone who has learned and grown from those experiences. What specific steps or approaches can I take to convey a positive attitude and showcase my ability to overcome challenges while discussing situations that may not have concluded on the most favorable note? Okay, so this is a good question, and I want to be able to answer it in an effective way. But in order to do that, I'd like to give an analogy here and talk about this in a way that's going to make sense. So I think in the legal profession, more than a lot of other professions, a football coaches get fired all the time, or CEOs get fired all the time, and then they end up in great next positions. But in the legal profession, there really is something about not portraying weakness. It's more serious than any other profession. And attorneys are expected to go into things and present strength as opposed to weakness. And I've thought a lot about this, and I think I understand the reason why. And it's actually very unique to the legal profession. Like, you go into interviews, you do things, and you're supposed to portray yourself in a certain way that's not necessarily goes on in other professions. This is extremely important. Understanding this, if you understand it well when you go into interviews, could turn around your career, could save your career. So another kind of question that it can change your life if you understand it. So I think, and that if you're a lawyer and you're representing a client and you go into court and you say negative things about them, or you don't portray their situation in the smartest way, then you're not respected. So attorneys that are unable to defend their clients and just talk about the weaknesses and so forth are not respected. I remember there was an attorney that I used to work with that was very negative about a client that he worked with to other attorneys, and he just, I don't know, wasn't respected. But I think lawyers are expected to basically put on very good arguments in favor of their clients. And if they don't do that, then that's considered a negative thing. And they're also expected to do that with themselves. You're an attorney, you're representing yourself. So if you're representing yourself, you need to be able to put on very good arguments supporting your case. And if you can't do that with yourself, how can you possibly get an attorney doing that with clients? So you need to do whatever you can to be able to put on a very positive argument for whatever it is that your reasons for moving. And if you can't do that, that's a problem. You're not a good attorney, or you're not as good of an attorney as you should be. I would encourage you to, when thinking about this particular question, what can you do to portray yourself in a very strong light as opposed to not doing that? You can't go into interviews and make yourself not put on a positive case. You have to figure out how to put on a positive case. And in most cases, the things that I spoke about, which are your ability to make it seem like it's about the work, your ability to talk about firm just not having work for whatever reason, changes, not make it seem like it's a problem with your situation or your ability to get along with people, or your critiques of the social or political landscape of the firm, all those sorts of things, and make yourself look like someone that works with others well is very helpful. So how can you do that? How can you preserve a positive professional image? One of the things that I said in this talk that I think is also very important is that when you move, if you're moving to certain markets, if you're moving to your home market, or you're moving to where your spouse is from, or something along those lines, that all of these reasons that you may have left a firm are no longer considered as serious as they would be otherwise. So you have to be very careful. I saw this one resume, and I saw it the other day, and I honestly couldn't believe it. This person had graduated from law, and this person may be on the call. I'm just throwing them and I don't think they should be doing this. But this person had graduated from law school, and they put down this major firm as where they started. And it said something, September of 2022. And it said, then it basically, instead of starting at the firm, went into rehab and just got out. It was something literally like that. And so the person got into good law school. Then they told everyone that's interviewing that they went into drug or alcohol rehab, whatever it was, as if this was going to help them. And there's nothing wrong with going into alcohol or drug rehab. It's perfectly acceptable. And it's something people should do if they have these issues, but it's also something that's very dangerous, because putting that on your resume is just basically leading with a weak argument. And so you need to figure out, how do I lead with strong arguments? How do I make my resume or what I'm talking about a good argument? Attorney's job is to turn around negative arguments and make them into positive arguments. So that's what you should be doing as an attorney. It should come naturally to you, and you should figure it out. That's what's expected. Let me say, okay, hang on a second. How do I make sure people don't worry about how I get along with others in the job interview? Is it okay to talk about it first, or should I wait for them to bring it up? And if I should talk about it, how can I proactively address concerns about my interpersonal skills before they become a focal point in the interview without drawing unnecessary attention to potential conflicts? Let me think about this. How do I make sure people don't worry about how I get along with others? Is it okay to talk about it first? Or should I wait for them to bring it up? And should I talk about it? Kind of proactively address concern? Okay. I don't know how these types of concerns and things would come up in an interview. How would you talk about getting along with others? Should you allow other people to bring it up? And should you talk about it? Can you proactively introduce concerns? So there's a couple different things about working in law firms. And this is a good question. You have, and this is just how law firms work. And these are the three types of people that are typically in law firms. And this is just something to understand. You have minders, which are people that watch, and I don't know why I'm talking about this, but it's interesting. Watch and supervise attorneys. That's their skill. Then you have grinders that are people that do the work. And then you have finders that are people that bring in the work. So these are the three types of people in law firms, which is, it's just this up is because different types of people typically gravitate towards different types of things. So you may be a grinder and not get along with finders. You may be a finder and not get along with minders. Different people just have different personalities, and that's important to understand. But your job really in any law firm is to do whatever you can to get along with as many different types of people as you can. So if a grinder may be someone that sits in their office and just works really hard, and that's their skill, and they're just people that work hard, and they may not get along with other types of people, and they may not like minders, they may not like finders. And so whatever role you're in a law firm, if you're an associate, if you're a partner, whatever your role, whatever your job is, you have to understand that your position is to do your best to get along with different types of people. What's interesting too in law firms, like there's so much conflict. Like I know partners that were very close to other partners for years, and then they have some sort of conflict and they're close, usually about work or something. But your job really is to do whatever you can to try to get along with as many different types of people as you can. And if you're able to do that, then you're often going to be, you'll be much better off. And you don't want to bring that up in interviews if you can. You want to try to talk positively about people. A lot of times what happens in interviews is the people will bring up that they know certain people, and do you know this person? You were this person. And when that happens, what you really want to do is you want to talk about as much positive, as many nice things as you can about that person, and make it seem like you're someone that likes a lot of people. I hope that answers your question, but you have to be someone that you try to look something along those lines. Okay, this looks like an interesting question here, this next one. I hope that answers your question. If you want to follow up with another question related to that, you can. But people assume you get along with others if you sound like you like others, if you're enthusiastic about others. You just have to seem someone that likes others. And there are people that can get along with others, or people that are looking for conflict, and you want to make sure you're on the side of or you look like someone that's always going to be getting along with others. Okay, I work in a tiny boutique, one owner, two attorneys. Okay, no partners. And our largest client trusts us with new, more sophisticated work, which I love. Our owner bungled it, and the client has taken the work away. This is the newest embarrassment, a long string of problems after the past 4 years. I'm normally so positive that it is a detriment, but I am now ashamed of where I work. My optimism inoculated me against the things that have gone on, including the owner dating the only other attorney. Okay. However, this client had loved the work I did for them in the past and seemed like they wanted to recruit me. Now that things have gone sour, I feel like my association with this firm makes me look bad. I want to let the client know that I want to follow their work and instead go in-house for them. I do not want to discuss why the firm bungled their work, even though it's the obvious elephant in the room. How do I approach this? Do I where to call the client directly and express my interest? Should I even try? Yeah. So I think were you and you really like the client and you think that they would like you, I would recommend, if you really want to work for them, then I think you should get in touch. If I were you and you don't think it's going to get back to the firm, I would probably figure out a way to get in touch with them. Just say, I'd like to meet with them. Do you have time to meet with them? And I would just say, I'm very sorry. You don't have to actually ask for a job. You could say, I'm very sorry the way things worked out. I really enjoyed the work we did for you. And if there's anything I can ever do for you independently of my job right now, I'd love to potentially talk to you or see if there's anything that we could do. and get in touch with a client that way. So that's probably, if you do want to work in-house, I think that's a good idea. And this, for everyone on the call, this is actually a very good point that's being brought up. So one owner law firms are actually very dangerous many times. Sometimes the owner will drinking or using drugs or just have bad morals or be taking all the money that comes in. And there's all sorts of problems that happen many times. But, who knows? But working for small law firms can be very dangerous many times, especially when owner law firms. That can actually be very good if you're close to that partner. But if you feel like, or the owner, but if you feel like that there's issues with a person and they're doing things that are bad judgment, I think a one owner law firm dating the owner or their attorney is probably pretty freaking toxic. It's not good because they'll be favored with work when things go bad. There's all sorts of problems with that. So it sounds like this is bad judgment. But if I were working for a one owner law firm, if I felt that person's judgment would in any way influence the course of my career, I think I personally would probably not want to work there, meaning if the person had bad judgment. This goes for law firms as well. So you can see law firms where the people in power have very bad judgment, and that can be very dangerous. There was an attorney that I was working with years ago, and he was working for Michael Avenatti, which is the same one that, he was the one that was representing, the porn star that was suing Trump. And then he was also got in trouble for trying to shake down Nike or something and went to prison. But the point is this guy was working for him. And that's an example of working for someone with very bad judgment that could have a very negative impact on your career. So you need to be careful if you're working for someone or a firm where the people are getting in trouble and doing things like that. So if I was you, I would look at this other potential opportunity, but you also need to be careful about going in-house. So anytime you work for one person or one company, it often can be very dangerous because your entire future is dependent on how that person or firm company acts. It's very scary. And I wanted to just bring up a quick point about going in-house, because a lot of people are very interested and really want to go in-house. It's a very popular career path. What happens a lot of times when people go in-house is they get a job in-house, and then after a year or 2 years or something, they lose their jobs. And one of the reasons for that is anytime a new CEO comes into a company, they often want to hire a new legal department. Anytime the company gets into trouble, they'll let people in the legal department go because they're a cost center, so they can save money. Or anytime a new general counsel comes in, that person also wants to bring people that are close to them. So you have to be very careful with in-house jobs. You also need to be very careful about one-owner law firms, because if something goes wrong, it can drastically affect your career. So you need to be very careful. Sorry, I'll answer this question in just a second. And someone asked another question about in-house, which I'll answer next. Okay, I've been struggling to find a job pandemic. I think maybe after the pandemic. And I've been told that my former positions are too short or varied in subject matter, and therefore there's a perception that I'm not focused or committed. This is a very good question. I'm excited to answer it. But my previous positions were year-long positions of public interest before I switched to private practice. Okay. And in my view, I've been focused my whole career on litigation. How do I effectively be a focused and committed litigator, given this unique background of mine? Okay, so this is a great question. And this is actually a very important question. It's another one of these questions that if you are new or you're trying to get a job could save your career. This is an incredible question, and I'll tell you why. So I look at resumes all day, every day, and have been for a quarter of a century. So I've literally had over 600,000 attorneys submit their resume to BCG. I've looked at every single one of them. I've never had anybody else do it. So the only thing that I'm looking for when I look at a resume, and again, I'm an expert, I'm bragging, but the only thing I do are permanent law firm placements. It's all I've ever done. It's all I understand. I'm learning new stuff every day. So to call myself an expert may not be the appropriate term, but I feel like I know more about this than probably anyone in the world or anyone that's ever known about it, just because I'm so focused on it. That doesn't mean that there's not probably people that are better in other aspects of it, but it's something that, because it's all I do, that I feel like I understand very well. And I'm not bragging by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm telling you that this is the only way that I make money to support. So it's very important. So the only thing that I'm looking at when I look at a resume is I'm looking at, I'll go into some of the reasons, but I'm looking at the practice area, and then I'm looking at practice setting. So practice setting. And these are two of the few things. And so I'll get into that a little bit, but the question that people have are, can you do the job? Do the job? Will you do the job? Will you do the job long term? And I'll just talk about this in a minute, because these are all, can you be managed? You want the job? You realize. So let me talk a little bit about the practice setting and the practice area. And this, again, this question, even though it may not look like it, is one of the most important questions that you could answer in your legal career. You could, if you're a young attorney, if you're an older attorney, this is the most important question that anyone that can change the course of your career and your life. And I'll tell you why. So when I look at a resume, the only thing that I'm looking for that I need to see is consistency in this area. So consistency in this area is incredibly important, because what happens in the practice area is, if you do one thing, like, I don't care, like most recruiters are like, oh, numbers and recruiters are like, oh, this person must be at a giant law firm between, this many years of practice and have this kind of law school in order to work with them. And it's usually like a big firm, they're doing corporate or whatever. So that's fine, but I don't care what your practice area is. You could be workers' comp, and that would be claimant, or you have two types of workers' comp. You can be personal injury. It doesn't matter what you are. Your practice area doesn't matter, but it needs to be consistent. So law firms hire people that do. Every law firm, if you work like you want a country lawyer in a small town or something, then yeah, you can register companies and do some trust in the states and personal injury. If you're in a small town, that's fine. If you want to work in a normal law firm where you start getting more than numerous people working there, you definitely, or you want to make money as an attorney, you definitely want to be focused on something, to be focused on the practice area, because that's what clients are paying for. If a client wants a trust in the states thing done, they're going to be much more likely to go to a trust in the states attorney who does everything than an attorney that does different things. If a client wants a divorce, they're going to be much more likely to go to an attorney that's a family law attorney than someone that does a bunch of different things. If you wanted to get an attorney, you would do the same thing. If your spouse is run over by a car, you're going to want to hire a personal injury attorney. You're not going to go to some generalist that does 15 different things. You have, if you break your spine, you're not going to go see a general practitioner or an internist. You're going to go to someone that's an orthopedic specialist or something, and probably a specialist in your. If you want plastic surgery, you're not going to go to a generalist that does 15 different things. So this is the way law firms think. It's the way the clients think. Like, you need to be specialized in something. And so here's what Harrison sees. Harrison sees, when I look at resumes, I could look at 25 different resumes. The majority of people are just all over the map. It doesn't look like they're doing anything in particular. And so those people can't get jobs. Law firms will not hire you if it looks like you're doing a bunch of different things. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get a job as an attorney, but it just means you're going to have a very difficult time in your career getting positions. Being secure is if you're not doing anything consistently. That's what you have to do. Even partners in big law firms, they may represent mid-cap companies doing a certain type of thing, and everyone has like some sort of consistency. The practice setting is unbelievably important. So you're bringing up that you worked in public interest before private practice. So practice setting is important because practice settings have different standards of the work that's required. So public interest is going to have different standards than a law firm. So here you're working for public interest, you might be working for taking a side on an issue, I don't know, and who knows, non-paying clients and all sorts of things. Paying clients have different standards than non-paying clients. You're training in private practice, you're working for paying clients. And anyway, so I think you get the idea. Practice equals paying clients and different standards. So the idea is, so if you go to work at a giant law firm, let's say it's Sidley and Austin, and Sidley and Austin is a big firm. They work for General Motors and all sorts of different companies. They're going to have different standards for the work you do than your typical public interest group. So just think about who would you want to hire? If you needed and let's think about this. If you needed a very sophisticated litigator to help you with, I don't know, with defending your company who's being sued for some horrible thing, would you want to take someone that had been in a public interest role, helping indigent people fight the immigration system, and then went to work in a law firm and been there for a year after being in public interest? Or would you want to hire someone who had a lot of experience doing that? So this is how law firms think. So if you're not from the right, and I'm going to tell you what to do, but you have to be able to sell people on, people are going to be very concerned about your practice area and the practice setting that you're coming from than anything. So you have to have a practice setting. It has to look consistent. So you frame your public interest experience in a way that you look like someone that is doing very sophisticated commercial litigation, and you frame it in that way. And one of the things that I see that's actually, I think I've just started seeing this recently, so I hope this continues. I don't know if it's people that watch my webinars or whatever, but one of the things that's very interesting is insurance defense is typically, and for those of you who don't know what it is, there's all sorts of different levels of insurance defense. So it actually can be a very sophisticated practice area where people make as much money as attorneys at the large law firms, or it can be not sophisticated. So there's people like the average insurance defense, you're representing insurance companies that are getting sued by people for car accidents and falling off ladders and all that sort of. And that's the typical insurance defense job. It's not, it's not the standards an insurance company requires for someone getting sued for a fender bender. They don't need they don't require the highest quality of work. They just want to save money and get things done quickly with a lot of expense. And so the attorneys do not necessarily need to make sophisticated arguments, or they're just pushing all this stuff along. And so they're not typically, it's not as respected. But if you're an insurance defense attorney, you can actually rewrite your resume in a way where you're not talking about defending insurance companies for people who got in bicycle accidents and things. You make it sound like you're doing very sophisticated litigation. You talk about all these litigation keywords, but you don't mention bicycle accidents and bender fenders and slip and falls and things. You talk about it in a way that looks like you're doing very sophisticated litigation. So that's what you need to do with the public interest. You make it sound like that. That's what you need to do with your practice area. You need to focus your resume and make it look like you're doing one practice area. But the practice settings are very important. I want to tell you guys, everyone on this call and girls, another thing that's extremely important to understand. And this is hugely important. It's something that you need to remember. It's something that you need to know. And again, it can change the entire course of your career in life. If you leave a law firm and go into another practice setting, and there's some exceptions, and go into another practice setting, which means like in-house or something like that, you will almost always never get hired by another law firm again. So I just want everyone to understand that. Why do I say this? I say this because I've represented tens of thousands of attorneys, and I watched them with law firms will hire them. And they do, by the way, they do rarely, but they do. But your odds of getting hired by a law firm decreased by 25 plus times because they don't understand. If you're going to, most of the times when you go in-house, you're doing a bunch of different things. You might be doing litigation, you might be doing a little corporate, you might be, who knows? But you no longer have the focus on the practice area. Then you also no longer have the focus on a practice setting. So what does that mean? That means that they don't know like what the standards are of the in-house job. They don't know like how they know if you're at Latham or Watkins, they know that the standards of the work and stuff are going to be very high, what it's going to be like to be there. But they don't know that in a different practice setting. And not only that, but you're typically doing all sorts of different types of work. So anytime you have public interest or something on your resume or different practice areas, you need to tone it down and make it look like you're doing one thing. And so this is the final point I want to make. And I don't want to I want to get to the next question, but these are very important questions. Law firms are asking, can you do the job and you have the skills? And that means looking focused on one thing. So you have to try to look focused on one practice area. And then will you do the job long term? If you go in-house or you're in if you've chosen to start your career in public interest, or you've chosen to do something unrelated to another practice setting, or you've gone into in-house, what practice setting have you chosen? That's not good, right? If you choose a different practice setting, then the odds are that you're probably not going to stay there a long time. And one of the things, this is interesting, this is for law students, this is for anybody that is considering this. So a lot of times what attorneys will do or law students will do is they will decide that they would really like to work in a public interest job their second year of law school or their second summer, or they would really like to work in public interest or something. And those attorneys that do that even when they're in law school, have a very difficult time getting jobs in in law firms that are difficult to get jobs, because they've shown that's the practice that they want. So if you don't work in a law firm after your second summer, during your first summer, and you've chosen some other kind of practice setting, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a job with a good law firm. Meaning a law firm is difficult, has relatively higher standards. So that's one of the problems of choosing different practice settings. It doesn't look like you're going to stay there, and then being able to manage and all that sort of stuff doesn't necessarily apply to that as much. Very important to focus on that stuff. Let me just here. These are great questions today, by the way. Thank you for everyone who's asking them, because this is very helpful, I think, to a lot of people. Okay, I've been struggling to find a job. I'm sorry. I've moved between firms to expand my professional network. How do I convey that my job changes are motivated by a strategic desire to broaden my connections within the legal community and enhance my career opportunities? Okay, so again, so it sounds to me like you're someone that is motivated by professional connections, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But what law firms are asking when they're hiring you is they're asking, can you do the job? Which means, do you have the technical skills and so forth to do the job? But they're also asking, can you do the job long term? So that's something we've talked about a lot today, meaning that, are you going to be someone who's going to commit to the job? Are you going to be someone that's going to stay there? Are you going to be someone? And so if you just say, I'm leaving I leave and I to broaden my professional connections, that's something that is going to make the law firm think that you'll leave again. So if you're not going to do the job long-term, why would they hire you? Because you're not going to commit instead of someone that would commit. So anytime you say something like this, you're just basically telling the law firm that you're unlikely to stay there. And why would they hire you as opposed to someone that's looking to stay in one place or goes into a job with that? And then all these things that, can you be managed? It may not impact that. Do you want the job? Maybe you do. Do we like you? But this is where you're going to lose out, is if you're just talking about that. So a law firm wants someone to come in and do the work. They don't want someone that potentially is going to leave because, okay. I'm going to answer this question. Not sure. But next question. I went from a paralegal to an attorney position. It only lasted a few months. It was a very small collection firm, and it wasn't a good fit for a number of reasons. I was going to stay until I found something else. The boss, whom I thought was treating me and another associate very differently, could tell I wasn't happy and terminated the employment. I've had a number of interviews from both attorney positions and paralegal to just work, but no offers. What is the best course of narrative to get hired? Okay, this is a good question. So and this applies to everyone here. So let me make sure I understand it. Small collection firm. It wasn't a good fit. I was going to stay. I've had a number of interviews with both attorney and paralegal. So what is the best course? Okay, so the first thing is the boss could tell you weren't happy and terminated my employment. So not happy. Okay. Not happy. We'll talk about that. And then no jobs for interviews. Okay. So the first thing is, people will let you go if you're not happy or don't look happy or you're not contributing. So you have to, in any job you go into, you need to look like you are happy or getting along, etc. Because people don't want people around them that are unhappy. It's okay that you're unhappy. It's nothing to worry about that you treated them properly. It doesn't sound like you did. You were. So you have to be very careful about any employer about not looking unhappy, because if you look unhappy, it doesn't make the employer feel good about themselves and they'll let you go. It's just better to have people around that don't have negative energy than it is to have people around that have positive energy. You need to try to look happy. The other thing is you do not want to worry about others. I know this is hard not to do, but you want to look like we wanted to worry about just doing a good job and so forth yourself. Never told the story, but it was interesting. I was interviewing with this law firm. It was a weird interview. There was a huge snowstorm in Washington, D.C., and I had to drive to this firm from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I had an interview, but this snowstorm basically shut down Washington, D.C., and I showed up at this law firm to interview, and there was only one attorney there, and everyone else hadn't shown up, and it was funny because they were all from Washington, D.C. And so this attorney interviewed me, and he took me into his office, and he said something like, he asked me about something, and I went into detail about how I tried to help a client, I was dedicated, I wanted to do all this good stuff, and he said something like, have you ever worked in a law firm? It's like completely competitive, like everyone's trying out to get everyone else. And then I responded to that and I said, that may be the case. I've never really worried about other people. I just worry about myself. And when I do that, everything seems to turn out well. And he really liked me. He took me out to lunch. The law firm didn't end up having any openings, but he tried to get me into their office in Detroit, which is very nice to me, and tried to help me. The point being that and he liked that, but you need to worry just about yourself. You can't worry about others, even though it's hard to do. And if you do that, then you're off going to be much better off. Now, this other thing you said, and I want to talk about it in a little detail, is you said that if you are an attorney and you pass the bar, I don't like the idea of any attorney taking a job as a paralegal. I don't like the idea of any attorney doing that, or even taking contract jobs and things, because I don't think you need to do that. I think if you were working a collection law firm, you should try to find other collection law firms that do similar work. I just don't think, that's a smart thing to do. I think that any firm that you're interested in potentially working in. So if you do, I'll just give you an example. If you do collection law firms, let me just here, law firms, Los Angeles, you'll come to this page and you'll see all these freaking law firms. And look at this. It's just crazy. I would try to contact all of these law firms that do this type of work. And look how many pages there are. There are just 256 law firms. And this is Los Angeles, right? But if you did collection law firms, I don't know where you might be, but Columbus, Ohio, for example, you do that, you're going to get tons of results too. How many results do we have here? We have 222, and that's just Columbus. The point being that whatever your practice area is, what would I do to get a job if I was doing collections law? This is so easy. I don't even know how to explain this, but I've done this at BCG before with our candidates that are in weird practice areas. I go and investigate the firms in these different areas. Then it generates millions of dollars a year in placement. So this is just doing something very simple like this with these law firms, because these law firms aren't getting lots of applicants. No one's applying to them. I would go, what is this thing called, Katz? I would write Mr. Katz saying, hey, I would like to do collections law with you. I learned about your firm. Be like, yeah, what the heck? Like, I need this. So that means you don't take a job as a paralegal. You go and you do a little bit of research and you find out people in the market that are doing what you do. Again, this can turn around anybody's career here. This is extremely important. I don't know why people don't do this. It's beyond me. It's astonishing. I don't know how many different words to use for it. People do not, they sit there and they go on Indeed or whatever, and they look for jobs and they think, oh, there's not enough law firm jobs or there's not enough in-house jobs. I better call a company that can be a contract attorney. I better try to be a paralegal. But no, you go and you apply to places that other people aren't looking at. This is incredibly important. I don't know how much I can explain it, but the point being, you look for jobs by researching and finding them proactively is a good way to put it, meaning apply to places without openings. Again, I say this on every call that no one understands it, or people understand it. I talk about it every week, and I'll talk about it again today. 85% of BCG's placements are at firms without jobs. What it is. So what does that mean? That means that we go and we research and we find places that you're likely to get a visit. And again, I'm not selling BCG here. I'm not trying to sell you on our company. I'm just telling you that this is 85% are with firms without jobs. And that's the reason being that you're the only applicant. If you find something that matches your practice area where and the firms aren't typically getting jobs, you're going to be in amazing shape. Do you think that people are writing Stephen Katz saying, Mr. Katz, I would love to work for you. I really want to do collection law. I would bet that's never happened. Probably, and this could be a 20-year-old law firm. I bet it's never happened. And that guy is going to be like, wow, someone really wants to do work with me. If you contact Fairfax Law, what are these guys? Zero down bankruptcy. Look at this guy. He's all over it. The point being, if you contact these people, you're much more likely to get a position because no one else is contacting them. This particular law firm, I don't know who they are, but I doubt they pay very much, but they're still going to be interested in you. They don't care where you went to. I don't want to say bad things about this firm, but they probably don't care where you went to law school. They're looking for people. So my point just is that you have to be proactive, no matter who you are, no matter what your practice area is, you have to be proactive and look for jobs. Now, one other thing I'll say to you, and again, this is my company, but Law Crossing is a good way to get positioned. Law Crossing, the problem with Indeed and LinkedIn and et cetera, is Indeed and LinkedIn, which are great ways to get jobs. I have nothing negative to say about these sites. But what I will say is all their jobs are from paid advertisers. So these are all paid advertisers. And what does that mean? That means that everyone that's putting their jobs on there is paying to do so. And so everyone that has an internet connection or is a member of those sites is applying to those jobs because they're advertised. What happens on Law Crossing is the jobs there are from firm websites, they're from employer websites, et cetera. And so they're not things that are advertised. And because of that, they're receiving a lot of applications because how many people are going to the Columbus office of Fairfax Law? They may have jobs on there is all I'm saying. If they did, then that would be helpful, right? It would be a place where you would get jobs. So if you were applying to one of those firms. So that's what that particular company does is it goes and it finds firms that have jobs on their websites and law firms and in-house companies and so do that. But the point is that you should never settle for a job as a paralegal or contract attorney because you think that there's not enough places to apply. There are hundreds, if not thousands of places to apply, regardless, whatever practice area you're in, whatever location you're in, there are a ton of them. And whatever your practice setting is. So I just want to make sure that you understand that because you have so many different opportunities. Everyone does to get a position and you have to be very careful. Let me just find something here. I'm sorry, I'm looking for more questions. There's a lot of questions. Some of them are difficult. Okay, this is a good question. So let me see. Okay, so next question is here. And again, anyone that has questions, you should ask them. I know that sometimes people have questions or they're looking for other people's questions. And if you have any that apply to you, it can be very helpful. So what would you advise explaining career breaks as a result of family caretaking responsibilities? Yeah, so this is a good question. So I see this a lot And it's a very common type of question. Like people have to take care of family and things, or people get sick, and that actually is an okay reason to be looking for a new job. So how do you explain that? You basically explain that someone got sick, or you had to, even having children is an okay reason. Law firms will accept it, and you can do that. The only thing you really need to ask yourself when you're looking for a job that way is employers asking again these questions. They're asking, can you do the job? Will you do those? Are you going to commit, or is this going to continually happen to you? So they want to know that you're going to commit, and they're going to want to know. And that's really the biggest thing that they're asking. Law firms need to understand if you're going to be able to if you're going to commit to the job, and if you're going to do it long term. Another thing anytime you have something like this on your resume that you have done, you just need to understand that the law firm or the employer is always going to be comparing you to people that may not have this stuff on their resume. So if your resume has career breaks, or your resume has all these different things, like, you're going to be you're going to be compared with people that don't have that. So that's all that you need to think about. But I would say that law firms like it, especially when people are in a position where they have to support families, or when they're spouses, their reasons, they're the kids, or they have. Law firms like it when you're in that position, especially like women, for example, that go and have kids, because it shows that you have people to support. It shows that you're likely to stay around, and it actually does make it look like you may have some employment security. So I think but in terms of this particular question, it's okay to have that. Sometimes people put that on their resume. I know, for example, when I'm hiring recruiters at BCG, like it's very attractive to me if someone has kids and is taking time off, because it makes them more likely to look like someone that will stay the long and commit, as opposed to someone that won't. Okay, this is a good question. The next one, it's from an in-house attorney, and this is a very common type of question. Okay, so this person says, in the in-house setting, how do I frame leaving my position because the company was pressuring me to act unethically without being seen as bad mouthing the company? Okay, so this is actually very common. I run into in-house attorneys all the time where they're pressured to do things that are unethical. And it's very common. It's very common. So how do you frame leaving your position because of that reason? I would say that when you're in-house, you have to be able to navigate this sort of thing. I think it's very important to bring that up, especially in interviews. You have to look like someone, and that's for anybody that's thinking about going in-house. That's a large part of the job, especially at smaller companies, is helping the company bend the rules and do things in a way that are helping the company. So you need to be able to be seen as someone that can do that. I think if you've left your job because of that reason, there are ways to frame it. I actually think sometimes if you talk about leaving because there were ethical issues and things that were just, you could say something like, there were things going on there that I couldn't support, something along those lines. I actually, it's probably okay to frame things that way, especially if you're saying that there were legal things going on. I would say that I liked everyone there. There were just things going on that I thought were difficult to support from a legal, something along those lines. I think you're probably okay. I've seen people have that problem a lot, and I think that those answers are actually, that sort of answers are actually okay. Okay, let me just see here. On the next question. So again, to answer your question, I've seen a lot of people leave for those reasons, and I think it's probably okay. And it actually is good. It makes it look like you're a good attorney. If things were unethical, then it's probably okay. Let me see. Okay, so this next question. In my previous position, I experienced I faced unexpected departure because the firm had no more work available. Or the challenges I've encountered finding your job post that experience seem to be compounded by the reputation of the law firm. How do I navigate discussions about the specific situation during interviews to ensure potential employers understand the circumstances and values I bring to their team? Okay, let me make sure I understand this. I know what work, however, the challenges. Okay, so what I'm not sure that what you're saying is that the law firm had a good reputation or a bad reputation. No. If it's so, let me talk about this. Answer this question a couple of different ways. So, if the firm had a bad reputation, then I think if everyone knows that, then I don't know how much that's going to hurt you. Talking about, I don't think it will, but I think the firm doesn't have any work. Then I don't know why the bad reputation. If the good reputation, government has a good reputation, then I'd be thinking, and people think highly of it, which I think is probably more likely a question. That you just need to be very careful. Talking about not having work is always dangerous because some people in the firm may have had work, but if there is no work available and something happens, it's okay to bring that up, especially if there really was no more work for you or anybody else. That's okay, but you just need to be very careful about how you address that because it can be very dangerous to act like you're to say there's no more work if it's a large law firm. Your job in every law firm is to do what you can to make sure that you're able to generate or to get work. I think I talked about that in a bunch of different ways, but if you don't have work, it's a sign that you're not necessarily, you're not getting the right people to like you, that you're not networking correctly and all those sorts of things. You're not creating work, and all those things are very important in any law firm because people want people that are able to do the work. Okay. This is actually another good question. I'm glad I got to it. I don't know why I didn't see this one earlier. The toxicness, moodiness, short-temperedness of law partners is virtually daily mem these days. That is to say, oftentimes the associate is truly not the problem, and for jumping across numerous firms, whereby someone who does generally work well with others, laid back and easygoing, so manages to draw the ire of partners who, as a result, stop giving work, resulting in the associate's departure. Sadly, alleged dissatisfaction with work is often subjective. One firm thinks the work is great, another thinks the work is poor, and are related to the above partner temperament. i.e. an associate delivers 90% valuable, substantive, case-winning work in briefs, but then typo errors in very preliminary drafts, and then you're suddenly permanently blacklisted from all permanent work. It's actually a good question. Let's see. Totally unreasonable, yet have no choice but to move or eventually get let go. How to explain outcomes of this nature? Okay, so this is a very good question that I think that is important to answer, important to break down different questions and different issues and talk about. So there are, in every firm, I think especially in large firms, toxic partners, we'll talk about that. There are subjective work and then work evaluations, and then there are typos and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to talk about each of these things and I'll tell you what's going on. But I want to start with why these typos and very preliminary drafts and your blacklisted from all future work. I want to talk a little bit about that because this is actually very important. So, and this is something that takes a long time for especially young attorneys to understand typos in work, errors, et cetera. So you can go, and this person is a litigator, basically saying, hey, like I really think through things that are going to win cases and briefs. And yet when there's typos and things in my work, I'm permanently blacklisted and thought badly of by people I'm working with. Okay, so there's a lot to this question. There's a lot going on, and this is very important for everyone here to understand. So typos and errors in work, like one of the things they show, and I'm just going to write these down real quickly. And so when there's typos in your work, and I went through a lot, like when I was working for a judge and everything, I never understood, like, why do people care so much about typos and these things that aren't perfect? And what is the problem? Why is everyone so concerned about that? The reason is because if you're making typos and so forth in your work, that the way that clients think, the way that judges think, the way that the partners reading this, they think that if you're making all these typos and so forth, and you can't put things down on paper properly, then how can they possibly be able to criticize? How can they trust your thought processes? Is this really well thought out? Is this point that this person's making correct? Because if what I'm seeing is a bunch of typos and errors, then probably this hasn't been really well thought out. And so what I'm reading, I can't trust. Is this case actually current? Has it been overruled? Is this point the person's making actually true? Is this what this and this means? Are what they saying about this incident Have they really thoroughly investigated, or are they leaving facts out that I shouldn't? So all these things, when you start making typos and errors in your work, this is what people think. If the client sees it, the client also thinks this makes me look bad. This makes me look bad. Meaning, my work's not polished. Why is this person showing me this work that's polished and perfect? How well they thought it out? This is what the client sees. Partner thinks it is disrespectful to show them work like this, because partner, just so you understand this, partner is the client. So anytime you're an associate and you're working for a partner, the partner is the client. So if you show something to the partner that's got typos and errors in it, the partner is your client, and the partner will not like that. The partner wants to feel like what you're doing for them is perfect, like you've thought through it, like it's very good. And if the partner thinks that, then the partner is going to trust your thought process. It's the same sort of thing. So if you're making these sorts of errors, it's a big deal, because you're just basically, you're calling into your thought process. You're not presenting something that shows the respect of doing something correctly. So you see, when I go through these, like I always fix these things, and I'm not doing this because I'm a mean guy, but then you could also probably run this through Grammarly and stuff, and then you'd see different results. But this is what you need to do. Every piece of work that you turn into a partner needs to be perfect. And you're blacklisted because they don't trust your thought process. They don't think that, they think your work's for us. They think you're not spending the time doing it. So you have to be very careful about this stuff. And I don't know how to say it. I used to think it was just crap. Like you, I just thought it was crap, but it's very important. I remember I was working for this federal judge, and I wrote this published opinion that had to go out to, back then they would send in it's so long ago, but they would send the distra, like a disc, and the printed copy of this thing was going to be printed, like the Federal Digest or whatever. And we proofed it, and we proofed it again. There was a small typo, and it wasn't even very noticeable one. I don't think but he was extremely upset for days about this. And because that's made him look bad. He didn't look like a careful judge. It was his public. So you just need to be very careful about all this stuff, and typos and errors are very important, because then it calls into question your thought process. And I don't know, this could change the course of your career if you understand, but you have to be as careful as possible. And you have to understand why this is. And again, it's just important. Now, one firm thinks the work is great, another thinks the same work is poor. Often it's related to the temperament. The temperament is actually very good. Now I'm taking your side. So the temperament of the partner, is of temperament partners. This is a very temperament, say that wrong. Temperament of partners. So there are firms where there are people that have a really bad, the partners that just are very toxic. There are people that if you work for them, everyone that's ever worked for them ends up quitting. Everyone that's ever worked for them has a bad experience, and the work is not that they have a bad experience and they leave. There are attorneys like that. And if you work for those sorts of attorneys, you can have a very difficult time in your career, and they can make you out of that firm. So you have a couple of choices. One is you can work for those people and risk that, or two, you can avoid working for them, or three, that you can try to figure out how to get along with them. So typically when there's someone that's toxic and a partner that's toxic, they're typically of a few types. Most likely, toxic partners are not often, but usually partners are partners without power. I can't even spell partners. Partners are without power, meaning they don't have business. They're dependent on others. They don't know where their work's coming from, all that sort of thing. So those are people typically you want to avoid. Any firm, you want to work partners that have the most business, and that sort of thing. So typically partners without power, and because of that, they're insecure, and then they take that out on people like that. And I've worked in firms where there are people that are absolutely impossible to work with, and that you have to avoid like the plague. And that's just how it is. So the toxic part. And so if you do work for them, then you do everything you possibly can to please them. You need to make sure you document things, that you're giving them what they need, and you do the best job you possibly can. So that's toxic partners with power. And then if you do work for people that are going to be very difficult, then you need to try to get out of work with them as quickly as possible. But yeah, so sometimes people end up with firms, like you're saying, with those types of people. You need to avoid them. But the biggest thing is, I would say, is that you need to basically do the best work you possibly can. And if you are making mistakes, you just need to make sure that doesn't become a theme in what you do, because that's something that you can't have happen. Or I'm not trying to whatever issues you're facing, because I think these are very important, but you need to understand that people will often stop giving you work because they don't like working with you. So you need to make sure that people like working with you. You need to do extra things for them to make you see that you have details. When I was working for partners, I would do things like, just to make them really like me. If I was giving them something that was written, I would show like as much attention to detail as I possibly could. So I would do things like and this is just things that I saw happening often with the best attorneys, is I might write a memo, but then I would attach cases beneath it, and I would highlight them. And then I might even, if I was giving something that was like 4 or 5 pages, and I might even put like a Post-it note, and with a paper clip over it or something, just to make sure, just little things like that, and putting things on chairs and just being nice to people and making them feel respected. And many times when people are mean to you or they come after you, for some reason they feel disrespected, or they feel like you don't think highly of them. And so they come at you and they do things like that. I guess my point to you would be that if you're having issues with people, it may be because they feel like they're being disrespected. And so you need to be very careful. Okay. Can I say that I want to relocate to my home state because of my ailing father? I do not want potential employers to think that I will leave again after he dies. I was raised in a state and spent the majority of life there, with the exception of the past 9 years. Yeah, absolutely. You say you want to relocate, but you basically say, you don't say ailing father. You basically tell the law firm, I'm from here, I want to come home. And you don't have to say it's because of your father, because you don't want them to think that you're going to leave again. But yeah, law firms love it if you're relocating to be closer to family and where you grew up. Again, like these are the questions that people ask. They're asking, can you do the job? Will you do the job long-term? Can you be managed? So yes, if you are relocating home, yes, you're probably going to stay. So yes, that's great. Yes, the firm loves it. And do you want the job? Yes, you're relocating home. So they like that. And do we like you? Yes, we like people from our town. Yes, we love people from our town. Love people that like people wanting to come to our town, whatever. People coming home. So it's actually, if you ever are trying to, can be managed, yes, work the same place 9 years. I don't know if that's so. Worked in a firm or whatever 9 years. So yeah, law firms love this stuff. So this is good. You don't have to say that you're going to leave after he dies. You just say, I'm relocating because I want to be home and closer to my family. So that's actually very helpful. It's great. You do not answer my question. Non-firm support and client development. This question references the firms not providing any budget to fund memberships and networking organizations like Rotary, not allowing worker bees to propose new clients to the firm, whether in or outside the worker bees practice areas, requiring a partner or more senior associate, usually a partner or other white man, to initiate discussions with a potential client. Let me just actually put this. This is really cool. This person laid this out. So I think here. His name's Karen. Thank you, Karen. Let's see here. Give me the last name. This is actually a good question. Not providing budget to fund membership and organization. I'm sorry, not answering my question about client support development. The question references the firms. A, not providing any budget to fund membership and network organizations like Rotary. B, not allowing worker bees to propose new clients to the firm, whether in or outside the workers' bees practice areas. C, requiring a more senior associate, usually a partner or a white man or other white man, to initiate discussions with a potential client, providing the potential client become a new client of the firm. Or D, not providing the flexibility in work hours to permit worker bees to attend to networking or trade associations or even bar association meetings. Come on. Okay. So yeah, these are good points. And so the client not providing a budget to fund membership in network organizations like Rotary. I'm sorry, but there's ways to get clients that don't involve those sort of things. So in most law firms, by the way, first law firm I worked at, people would just cold call potential clients. They'd cold call people that were sued or that sort of thing. So just because the client's not providing a budget for this is not an excuse not to get business. You can't look at one because the client's not providing a budget for this as a way to not get business. That you have to find other ways. How do people get business? Sometimes they find people that get sued a lot and they go meet with them and talk to them and be their friend, or they clients in all sorts of different ways. No, just because you don't have a budget for does not mean that's the only way to get business. Not allowing worker bees to propose new clients to the firm, whether in or outside the project areas. That may be true, but I'm not trying. Law firms need business to survive. So why wouldn't they like that? I don't know why they would do it or not, but law firms need business to survive. If they're not allowing this, then I don't know why they wouldn't want new business. But if that's the case, yeah, if they're just saying we don't want any business, then yeah, that's not good and you should leave. But I don't know why a law firm would do that, but maybe they would. Requiring a partner, more senior associate, or other white man to initiate discussion with a potential client regarding, yeah, so that's how it works. So if you're an associate and you want to bring in a new client, the law firm needs to have, you typically, if you're an associate, you're going to need a partner who's sponsoring the relationship. And the partner sponsoring the relationship is the one that's in charge of billing. They're in charge of making sure the work's done a certain way. They're in charge of all this stuff. So you can't just consider yourself responsible for all these things. You can't set a budget for the issue. You can't be responsible for billing. You can't be responsible for collections. You can't be responsible for making sure the work's done a certain way. That's just someone at a higher level needs to be able to do. And you're not in that position yet. And then not providing the flexibility of work hours to permit worker bees to attend networking or trade association, the bar association events. Okay, so the example I gave earlier, people that do this, you either do it or you don't. So you go to work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then you leave and you go out and develop business until 11 or 12 p.m. Every partner in a law firm that has become successful and done well always is going out and spending their free time. They're going out to dinners numerous nights a week. They're doing all these things to form relationships with people. And that's what you need to do. You can't expect the law firm to allow you to take time off work. You need to do it on your own. That's your job. So you do that, and that's what you do as an associate. So you can't expect the firm you can't make reasons for not doing this stuff. I'm not trying to be rude, but this particular question is basically making other people responsible for your success. You can't. You have to do all this on your own. You have to find a way to do it, because if you don't, then you're not going to have the sort of career you want. You have to do all this stuff on your own. You can't allow others to be responsible for your success or lack of it. Now, you can certainly move firms if you want to find someone that's going to fund membership and things, or give you time off of work to develop clients. But I don't think that's the way to think about it. I think you have to think about making something happen regardless of what someone asks, or regardless of because people that are going to get business are not going to have, you're not going to have excuses or alibi. They're just going to do it. I graduated from law school in the last 2 years and I've lost 2 positions. The first was a small law firm that eliminated my practice here, but tried to pin it on me. Okay. I joined a branch office of a larger firm, but now again, I've lost my position. I worked very hard on my last position, sometimes over 230 hours a month, but found it hard to mesh with the branch office managing attorney. She fired me almost on the spot on the first occasion she could accuse me of a mistake. Now I'm still earning my career and already have been at several firms, which are not leave in great terms. What can I do to talk about these experiences and market myself for a new job in future interviews? Okay, let me just see. What can I do to talk about this? Okay, so it sounds like this person, or you've had difficulty, let me see, I'm trying to get these jobs lined out. Firm eliminated your practice area, but tried to pin it on me. During that was a large branch office, and I lost my position. I worked very hard. Okay. Now I'm still early in my career and I've already been in several firms. Okay. So the first thing to understand that I think a lot of people here have been having, and first of all, I want to say that I think that anyone that spending time in these webinars can change your career just because you're learning about things that I know have answers to because I've seen it so many times. And this is, these are very good questions, and knowing how to respond to these sorts of issues are things that, it's just very smart to spend time on these webinars and these questions. Very impressed, everyone. It's very good that you're learning all this stuff. But this person said, I graduated from law school and have lost 2 positions. The firm eliminated a practice here and tried to pin it on me. And then this other person is saying, fired, hard to mesh with the office managing attorney. Okay. And she fired you. Okay. So the first thing about I don't know why the firm would pin losing a practice area on a junior attorney. Maybe they did, but that just seems like a very difficult thing to stomach. I don't know how I don't know. And then it sounds like you were not getting along with the managing attorney of the office and fired you when you made a mistake. So the first thing is everyone, like this person earlier said they were fired by a bunch of places for making mistakes. And this person is saying they were fired for making mistakes. But think about it this way. Like if someone likes you, they are not going to fire you. They are not going to fire you for a mistake, right? They're not going to, and you wouldn't either fire you for a smallest. So, and this is a question. This is coming up on every single call, every single webinar. People are having questions about, I got fired for a small mistake. I got fired for a small mistake. I got fired for a small mistake. So yeah, so these mistakes sometimes are a big deal and people don't like them. But in reality, if someone likes you, if you like someone and they made a small mistake, say think you had someone working for you, taking care of your child, and you liked them and you were part of your family, and you invited them over for dinner and you got them presents at Christmas and that sort of thing. Like everything, you were very nice to the person and they got you presents and did all these nice things for you. I'm just saying they worked for you for a year and you really liked them and they talked, I don't know, just think about this. And then they did something dumb, like they left your door open and the dog got away because they forgot to lock a door. And then it took them 2 days to find the dog. When they found the dog, they're not going to get fired, even though that's a bad mistake. If they're really close and the people like them, you wouldn't fire them. You wouldn't say, oh, you're fired. Even though this person, you like them so much, you wouldn't fire them. So why would someone fire you for a small mistake? The only reason you get fired for a small mistake is if for some reason someone doesn't like you. So if someone doesn't like you, and you make someone mad, or you don't make them comfortable, or you make them feel a certain way, then they're going to fire you. So you have to be very careful. Like, why would someone fire you? The only reason they're going to fire you for a mistake is if for some reason that you're not close to them. Now they may be crazy and fire you, but your job as an attorney with a client, with the partners and other people working for you, your job is generally you want to connect with people, if you can, with people and make them like you. This particular thing that this person is saying is, I really think a lot about this. And I was thinking about this earlier today, because I've just seen this so much. I've seen people, if someone doesn't like them or they make a small mistake, they get fired earlier in their career, and it becomes this traumatic thing where they're no longer practicing law. And this happens to so many people. It's tons of people. I see it all the time. When I say I see it all the time, I see it every day, resumes and cover letters and things that people are writing to me. So this is a big deal and happening an awful lot and happening to a lot of people. What do you do to prevent, to guard against this? What do you do to protect your career, to make sure that these small errors and things don't help you? You do whatever you can to get along with people and you learn from your mistakes. But the other thing that shocks me, and the thing that's interesting, is I used to hire recruiters. This is years ago, but the recruiters that I hired, I would be talking to people on the phone all day about jobs and things. And they would basically, people that lost their jobs for these exact sort of reasons. And I would hire them because I knew that they would probably have a very difficult time getting another job. And I would give them my identity, working with other attorneys from big firms or working in the recruiting firm. But it just happened. These people never became lawyers again. They never practiced law, and they probably should have continued. So what is the point of all this? The point that's really important to understand is that if you are 27 or 28 years old, when all this stuff happens, when you have a rocky start, you lose a few jobs, I don't know what the problem is. Think about how old is Biden? I don't know. Biden, how old is people? You have 60 plus years left in your career. So think about this, 60 years left in your career. Come on, think about this. So if you have 60 years left in your career and you're 27 or 28 and you get fired from a couple of jobs because of typos and not getting along with people, you have a long time to fix that. If you fix it in 27 years, one other lifetime, you're going to be 54 when you fix it. Just think, you have in one lifetime, you'll be 54, and you'll be 54. And do you think you can fix it in one lifetime? Come on. And when you're 54, you'll still have over 30 years left in your career. No, this is crazy. If you're having all these issues in your career early on, the dumbest thing you can possibly do is to give up and think your life is over because you made some mistakes at the age of 27, 28. There are attorneys that I've placed personally in their 80s that have had lots of business and been very active. So no, you should not give up because your career is off to a rocky start. You should fix it. If you went to law school and you want to be an attorney and you can learn lessons from all this. Some of the most successful lawyers I know started out working for their families as attorneys. Then they went to work at some random attorney doing, corporate law, like for just dumb type of corporate law. Then after that, they did something and then they eventually started, these firms are hugely successful. So there's nothing wrong with having learning lessons early in your career. Everyone does. You just don't worry about if something bad happens to you the first 5 years of your career. You just keep making mistakes over and over again. You fix them and become a better attorney and learn from your experience. The idea is you don't give up, and you don't ever want to give up. So you give up. If you give up, you're making a huge mistake, and no one should give up. If you're 65 years old and still making mistakes, then you probably should give up. I've seen people whose careers have turned around very late in life, like in their 50s or whatever. You just need to be careful. You can't let this stuff define you. You need to define yourself based on other stuff. Getting fired from a prior position prevent me from getting barred in other states, even if fired on unfair terms, just supervising, just nothing ethical. No, of course not. No, you're not ever gonna get fired because not get barred because you fired. Listen, I think I said this earlier. Most attorneys get fired. Some of them get fired 5 or 6 times. It doesn't matter. You get fired 10 times. If you get fired, that's not something that you should allow to define your career. You should not worry about it. You should just move on. Most people get fired. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You're just learning lessons. No one should worry about getting fired at any point in your career. It's just something to worry about. You shouldn't. Let me just see. Okay. So I think those are about all the questions that people had today. A lot of these questions I'm just looking at. I think I've answered them all. Oh, there's one more I'll answer and then see here. I'm just making sure I answered them all. Give me a second. Okay. When an attorney says he left big law because he did not like the politics, does it actually mean not get along with others? No, of course not. So there are politics in certain big firms, like the politics of having to please certain people, the politics of having to be on the right side of things. And you have to be able to navigate those politics. I remember there was one firm that I interviewed with. Someone wasn't very nice to me in the interview, and I didn't go to work there. And then the person that had gotten an interview there came back and said, this person is now on the wrong side of the political spectrum with this firm. And then the person eventually lost their jobs. You should come interview here, whatever. But the point is that the politics in firms are what they are, and some people don't like them. And there's no reason to be in a big law firm if you don't like the politics. It's just you need to be able to understand it in some cases to do well. So there's no reason to really worry about it. If you don't like it, it's perfectly fine. People leave because they don't like the politics. Okay, next question. I think this is the last one. There are specific phrases or language choices that I should avoid when explaining the circumstances of my departure from a law firm to ensure I come across as constructive rather than defensive. No, I don't think there's certain phrases. I think the best way to handle it is just to talk about it in the terms that I've covered in the webinar, which means trying to get better work or trying to move up in terms of the type of work I'm doing or moving cities and things. But I think you have to make sure that you come across and you make a positive argument for yourself. Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions. I certainly appreciate everyone being on this webinar today. I think that learning about this stuff really can change the direction of your career and make you do a lot. I'm very surprised about how many questions there were. So this is great. I think over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start focusing on different things. One week I'll do interviews, next will culture. So there's definitely a lot of material that I want to cover with everyone for the next couple of weeks. So that'll be good. And then just a reminder, it's almost December. And then every quarter we do like a resume and cover letter review. So that'll be in about the next month and beginning of the year. So that's exciting. One other thing I also wanted to bring up, if you're looking for jobs, this is actually one of the best times of year to look for jobs. The reason is that no one else is looking for jobs. So our resumes always slow down. People submitting their resumes always slows down this time of year. People applying to jobs also slows down this time of year. And it's the reason it's such a good time to get a job is because everybody's still working. And you're the only person applying for positions. Everyone else is just taking it easy. So you have a much better chance of getting a job this time of year. The other thing that's fun about getting a job this time of year is that it's actually a much better time to get a job because people are just nicer. They're in better mood because they've spent, I don't know what it is. They've spent time with family, but people aren't typically, maybe they're out drinking and I don't know. But the point is that people are just, so typically if someone goes out in an interview, they might have a 25 to 100% chance of getting a job, depending on the firm. When you're interviewing this time of year, I think the odds are much better and applications tend to have a better close rate in terms of getting interviews because no one else is applying for jobs. It's crazy. Like our company, like even this time of year, like the number of applications is down by 4 times. And it's like that every year, like for people. So it's a good time to apply for jobs. Again, thank you everybody for being on the call and we'll see everyone next week. Thanks.